My world is my storytelling.
My world is diverse. Our world.
My world is astrophysics.
It's always been a dream of mine.
I don't know what my career pathway will be.
I approach architecture from the point of view of my culture.
I want to contribute to my people.
It's a way I can give back.
I want to change the perception of engineers.
I want to take my tohu home when I graduate.
Right now, it's about me.
And this is my chapter.
How to do nothing. Gaming is a great way to do nothing with your mates. Best part is, you can pretend you're in the NBA. Even when you're in your stepdad's garage.
My world is my storytelling.
My world is diverse. Our world.
My world is astrophysics.
It's always been a dream of mine.
I don't know what my career pathway will be.
I approach architecture from the point of view of my culture.
I want to contribute to my people.
It's a way I can give back.
I want to change the perception of engineers.
I want to take my tohu home when I graduate.
Right now, it's about me.
And this is my chapter.
How to do nothing. Gaming is a great way to do nothing with your mates. Best part is, you can pretend you're in the NBA. Even when you're in your stepdad's garage.
Experience what it's like to be a part of the Waipapa Tūmatoro whānau? Join us at our Manawa Mai Info Evening and Open Day events to find out what it's like to be a student at the University of Auckland. Register today.
Up to triple elixir with the Earthquake and Plague, sudden death, and oh my gosh, at the last second.
That was actually a big upset. Sudden death.
I think it's their game right there. Go Zero. There you have it.
Congratulations, what a great game.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It is week 2 of the UOA LPL Pro. It's the Clash Cup ANZ Season 1. Second week here, I'm Gino, and I am joined by Kai for another night of exciting action.
It's going to be good. Week number 1, we saw some pretty meta-setting precedences coming out going into week number 2. I'm very excited to see how everything shapes out.
Yep, it's going to be a fun one, but why don't we just break down the tournament to start with, just to make sure everyone is on the same page. And it's the top 16 players that we're going to be seeing tonight. They've come from a much bigger pool than that, but we've only got the best here in the LPL Pro division. Tonight, we're actually going to be saying goodbye to 8 of those because we are playing the double elimination format. 4 of them, of course, have going to be exiting tonight, with 8 of them taking a loss in the first week. And the last thing, of course, to mention, Kai, is that it's a dual format. So we've got the best of 3s across the entire tournament here in the dual format, where you can't use the same card more than once.
Yeah, we saw some pretty interesting decks coming out from week number 1. Obviously, a lot of on-meta stuff, but a couple of things that weren't necessarily expected. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shapes out again here for week number 2.
Yeah, a couple of fun little surprises. But talking about prizes, we've got some of those to give away as well. And it's going to be $10,000 in total. The first place winner walking away with $3,000 and that champion's title. And then everyone else also putting something in their pocket. Tonight, of course, that very bottom rung there, the bottom 4 players will be walking away with $200 should they be the first to fall in our first season of this Clash Cup for ANZ.
Hey, $200 is still a lot of money. So, I mean, they're going to be happy with what they're walking away with here tonight, regardless. I mean, top 16 is something to brag about, but walking away with money as well, I mean, you can't really argue, can you?
Esports professionals earning cash. You love to see it. Why don't we see our upper bracket for today, and we'll get a sneak peek at some of the matches we'll be seeing later on in the night. So these are our top 8 players right now. Any names that catch your fancy right now, Proto?
Big games to watch tonight. Zolnino versus Lemons is going to be a huge one, I think, and Felipe versus Fitchy is also going to be another one to sort of keep an eye out on the cards. I think two pretty big players, actually, we'll say, from the first week that are of note, some interesting play styles. So hopefully those are going to be as good as we think they're going to be, because they look pretty heated.
Yeah, some very exciting matches there with some of the best players we've got to offer. But there's also a bit of excitement on the other side of the bracket, Kai, as we look towards the lower half of the bracket, because that's where it's a bit more hairy today. We've got, as we said, the 8 players who lost their first round matches, and now they have to face off to stay in the tournament. These guys are going to be and girls are going to be facing off against each other to see who comes out on top and moves on to the second round of the lower bracket. And for 4 of them, who's going to go home?
Yeah, it'll be sad to see 4 of our players go this evening from the lower bracket, but ultimately, you know, you can't have a tournament without some loss, unfortunately. We will see that lower bracket filled out, obviously, as the night goes on as well. More players will be coming into that sort of lower side, but some games to watch. I think Lana is going to have another really good night. She had a pretty good showing last week, so I would think that that's going to be one to watch for the lower bracket, but we won't know until we see it.
All right, well, why don't we just get right into our first match and have a look at the head-to-head, get some more info about our first competitors for tonight. It's going to be Paladex versus Codespur.
Paladex in week 1, unfortunately going down to Zolnino. I mean, look, really great playstyle from him. A lot more aggressive right out of the gate, I think. Sort of something that might be a point of focus for him tonight. We saw Cycle be something that he's pretty comfortable with. So going up against Codespurt, who, you know, sort of played into that similar play style, is going to be interesting to see. Trophies have gone up since the first week, 7,200 for Paladex and 6 for Codespurt. So, you know, that might have something to say about it. But this is going to be our first match of the lower bracket. So this is pretty big play setting things. This will be our first player to go home this evening.
Yeah, so as we said, we're starting off with the lower bracket tonight, having those important matches, seeing who goes and who stays here in the tournament, and then we will get on to the upper bracket matches later on. I mean, you know, a 6 seed, 8 seed, both in the top half of the draw and both finding themselves in the lower bracket to start off with.
I mean, both of them came up against some pretty big foes. I mean, Zolnino, we saw him take that in a 2-0 fashion, really, really dominant from him and sort of just setting Paladex straight down. Codespurt, a very similar affair. But, I mean, we can't really rule them out. I mean, it was week 1 of play. Meta was still being set. I mean, we did see Skeleton King become a pretty big thing paired with that Graveyard in week number 1. Cycle was really prominent as well. So not really going to be surprised if we see the meta come up. Game number 1 is live. Paladex versus Codespurt. Bar Barrel off the bat, met by the Tombstone. I think we're already seeing Skeleton King vibes coming out here from Codespurt.
Yeah, we did see the Tombstone paired with a lot of their Skeleton friends last week, and as predicted, there's a Skelly King straight out there on the right-hand side. Graveyard coming in off the back of it, wasting no time with that. It's going to be a Hunter. You know, sure, he's got a couple of bullets to spread across. Is that going to be enough with the Fireball coming down as well? There's still a lot of Skeletons who have a chance to get on this tower, but a very, very nice Bar Barrel actually pulls a lot of them off.
That was really good defense there from Paladex. It conceded a little bit of damage considering that push was actually quite elixir heavy, but really well dealt with. I mean, for not a lot of elixir spent, 4 + 2, that's a 6. We've got the Royal Giant on the right side now, left side now, sorry. So he's going to be doing his best. The tower's going to come down early to try and deny, but with the Dark Prince there, the splash is going to shut all that down. We'll get a couple shots off, but unfortunately here for Codespurt, that means he's going to take just as much damage as he dealt.
Yeah, we see actually, I think that was a single Zappy on the right-hand side who got a couple of hits in and in response manages to even up things with that Royal Giant doing decently. Oh, death knockback there from the Skelly Giants. Damage actually pushing the Archer Queen into the opposite lane. A little bit unfortunate. Don't believe she'd used the Cloaking Cape just yet. Okay, playing the Inferno Dragon as the tank.
Interesting choice. I mean, paired with the Hunter and the Barb Barrel, though, again, really cheap counter to a 9 elixir push there. Codespurt not going to be happy about that one, but Paldex really well defended again. His defense has been impeccable this evening, but as we head into double elixir, this is where we're going to see the Royal Giant come into his own. It is just going to be Royal Giant after Royal Giant. We already see it coming out the left, paired with the Fisherman and the Dark Prince. Again, things are about to get interesting.
Yeah, Tombstone goes down in no time at all. The Skeleton King can tank that lightning as they try and mitigate the damage coming out. You can see Paldex now starting to get a little bit ahead. This time he's got a bit of a bulkier tank to come out. The Skeleton Giant there trying to do his best to let his little friends get some damage in on that right-hand tower. And sure, they do. They even things up, and now the counter pushes on. And it seems every time the Dark Prince comes down with this Royal Giant, that Codespurt is struggling to stop it from doing a lot of damage.
It's a great fireball there as well from Codespurt. A lot of damage dealt to that Archer Queen, which means she is going to have to use that cloak ability to take the Inferno Dragon down, which is actually going to keep the Royal Giant up here going through this left lane. The Giant Skeleton is going to come out, grabbed by the Fisherman, so the Royal Giant's not going to be taking as much damage. Oh, there you go. That's what you want to see. A lot of damage from the Royal Giant. This puts Codespurt in a really bad position now unless he can equalize on that right-hand lane.
Yeah, that said, the bomb, the death damage there from the Skeleton Giant was actually pretty well put together. The Skeleton's probably doing their best job yet from the grave to try and take down that right-hand tower. 1:30 left in overtime. The Archer Queen straight onto this right-hand tower, but not worried about that even slightly at the moment. He's completely focused, Codespurt, on making sure this Royal Giant doesn't get too many hits in, but a nice lightning will take down the Zappies that have really been the center point of Codespurt's defense there in trying to stop that Royal Giant from getting too many shots in. So I think they held on to that lightning for quite a while. Was that the first use we saw out in that entire game?
No. I think that was the second or third use we saw from the lightning. He used it in pair really well with the Royal Giant push. Obviously, when those big tank cards came down, we saw that lightning used a couple of times to clear out the board on Codespurt's side of things, and it did work really, really well. The Royal Giant in the end there, I think 3 shots to finish the job off. I mean, paired with that big spell, it was quite devastating. So no real surprise that we saw the Royal Giant come out on top there. The Skeleton King, again, we saw it in week number 1. He didn't have a great effect. We didn't see that ability used too much. I think we only saw him get the summon off twice. So again, raises questions about Skeleton King's viability, but yeah, I mean, we saw him work as well. So,
and it just felt like it was taking too long to get the right unit cycled onto the right side. Like using the Inferno Dragons for tanks. Like, do you really want that when you could be, taking down the Royal Giant with that? We saw it, sometimes doing that, and sometimes trying to take the role of tank, and just seemed a little bit confused on that. So, if we have a look there at our first game, you can see. There's a lot more damage done on the side of Paldex there.
Yeah, Paldex, his deck was really, really good in the end. I mean, the cycle was pretty much, constantly going. He didn't really have a moment where he was draining a lot of elixir on the board, which is probably what you want to see given the style of deck he was playing, trying to keep that Royal Giant on the board as much as he could. Codespurt, on the other hand, struggled to deal with it going into game number 2. Oh, sorry, no, this is going to be highlights. My bad. There we go. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting how it played out.
Well, you can see that both of them struggled to take a win in that first game. In the first match last week that we saw. So Paldex finally getting some love there, putting some numbers on the board. But what's going to come up next after we've seen that first lot out from them? Is there anything you remember from sort of the first week of their play, Proto, that gives you any hints of what else could be coming up?
I mean, we did see Paldex bring sort of a cheaper cycle-style deck more towards the 3-9 side of things, and that did work really well for him in the first week of play. Unfortunately, to no avail in terms of game count for himself, losing that one out 2-0 to Zolnino. But CodeSpurt, I mean, he sort of stayed true to what he played, sort of more on meta in the first week, and obviously seeing the Skeleton King paired with the Graveyard for game one, it's no real surprise that he seems to be sort of staying to keep that style of play. But I mean, just in the win percentages as well, obviously Paldex now finding himself at 33% as opposed to CodeSpurt, who's actually yet to win anything. It's a bit unfortunate, but somewhat expected going into this. Paldex did have, I would say, out of the two of these players, the better sided matchup from memory in week one. But again, that's not telling how these two players are going to play for week two. Completely different game, completely different subset.
Okay. So I think we're still. Is this the replay of the
highlights
first
of game one? Yeah.
Game? Yeah. Okay. Just having another look at that. Unless it's, unless we've had a restart of the game or something for some reason. Because did we see Electro Spirit last time? Just trying to work through this proto.
It's the electric spell, the lightning spell, sorry, was pretty prominent, I would say, there for Paldex in game number one. He used it really, really well in pair with that Royal Giant, so it's no real surprise that he walked away with the victory at the end of the day. But I mean, CodeSpurt did hold on. He got that tower on the right side down to about 600 health with the Graveyard. So had he had a little bit more succession on that right side with that Graveyard, maybe getting the Skeleton King a little bit closer to the tower, getting that summon ability off a little bit more than we saw, it would have been probably CodeSpurt's game, I would have to say. But I mean, it's difficult to pick it. It is really difficult to pick it.
All right, so I think we might have been looking at the replay, and it looks perhaps like the players have been. Looks like we're coming into the end of game two here. So with looks like we've got a completely different matchup here. Have a look at these decks. We've got a bit of a bridge spammy deck, or is that a log bait? I don't know. How would you classify this one by CodeSpurt here, Kai?
Somewhat of a log bait. Definitely has that element of cycle to it as well, with the Goblin Barrel, with the sort of the Bandit too. So the Rascals are going to be really the only sort of big tank card here. The Cannon card as well can do bits, but it's going to be game two over before we really get too much into it, with Paldex securing that one right out of the gate. And that is going to be a very swift 2-0 for our first game here this evening, Genome. And I know we didn't get to see too much of game number two, but those decks look pretty similar. I mean, from what I got in that sort of 30-second breakdown, it was two very cycle-oriented decks. So, I mean, again, we saw Paldex walk away with it, but again, as I already mentioned, that is the deck style that we saw him sort of fall into comfort in for week number one.
Yeah, I mean, there were some differences, right? I mean, having a look at my notes there, Paldex was playing an Elixir Golem deck in week one, and Minor Golden Knight as well. Which was, probably a bit more cycle-focused. Why don't we have a look and see how this one broke down in the second match there. So Paldex taking down CodeSpurt 2-0, and definitely coming out on top. It looks like he's retooled a little bit, perhaps, as you were saying, keeping some of the same style as the first week, but just switching around some key pieces. Unfortunately for CodeSpurt, that means they are our first contestant to say goodbye to.
Hey, I mean, $200, you can't really complain too much. It's a good chunk of change to walk away with, but unfortunately for CodeSpurt, that is going to be the end of the road. But we'll have a little look, I think, at what's coming next for Paldex in the coming time. But yeah, it's interesting. Decks, I mean, the decks for game one were pretty fitting from first week. We saw meta, we saw that continuation of that sort of on-card play style. So no real surprise. No real surprise that we saw a continuation of that.
Coming up with those. We saw as I said, Paladex actually brought out some interesting stuff in the first week. I think he was possibly the only player I can remember who was pulling out Elixir Golem.
Correct.
And it didn't go very well. That's why I was in the lower bracket. But unfortunately, a bounce back from Paladex is seeing him move on now to at least the second round of the lower bracket, and it's still a long run from here, Proto. There's there's a lot of matches left to play if you want to make that miracle run from taking a loss in the first round.
Well, he's going to have some pretty big hitting players coming down as well from the upper bracket. I mean, we already see, the Fitchy match. That's going to be one of two big players coming down. Lemons versus El Nino. That's going to be another big hitter put down. So there are going to be some of our sort of, I guess we can call them focus players from week one going down into lower brackets. So things are going to get pretty spicy on both ends, I think, going into next week.
Well, congrats to Paladex, and we say goodbye now to Code Spurt. But why don't we have a look at the second match we've got coming up for today? And once again, let's move into the head-to-head to see what that looks like. So SB versus Lana. Now, we've got SB there, a lot lower down on the seed. As you mentioned, we had... a lot of these players obviously been grinding a little bit more since the first week, right? So we're seeing the trophy start to pull up now, and you can see that SB, certainly on that count at least, has pulled ahead, Proto.
Yeah, SB's definitely been putting the leaderboard grind in-game off stream. So no real surprise there they decided to pull away in trophy count. But I mean, just looking at what we saw in last week's games, I mean, Lana, she had a really good matchup against Czech Pro. It went the full 3 games. So it was, I believe, our first match. Yeah, it was for the evening. Or second match of the evening that went to that full 3 maps. And funnily enough, Lana was also the player that surprised us with a couple of interesting card picks. Obviously, Lava Hound with the clone spell used to be a pretty relevant meta, I would say, deck. It sort of fell off given a couple of changes that came out to clone and Lava Hound. But we saw that attempt to be paired last week. Ultimately, it wasn't the pairing we saw with the Lumberjack and the Bats being the star of the show and the clone spell. So I'm hoping that Lana decides that she wants to bring something off meta this week, but we'll get to see.
Yeah, all right. Why don't we jump into the game and have a look at how this one shapes up. We've got a Hog to start off with. Love to see that in your hand just to test the defenses. Obviously, if your opponent doesn't have the right cards in cycle when that Hog comes out, you can be rewarded with some free damage at the start, and that's the case here.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of swings didn't necessarily hurt anybody, especially if you are the owner of said Hog Rider. So SB going to be happy with the starting moments of this matchup so far. But Lana, again, falling more into that meta as opposed to last week. But our first Night Witch, I believe, of the tournament, Gino, coming out the back.
Yeah, I think we saw both the Mother Witch and the Night Witch, last week. Not many. I think probably the Mother Witch more so. We did see a couple of options, whereas I think maybe the Night Witch only came out against, I think it was in a Golem deck, if I do remember correctly. So a Fisherman pull there. Unfortunately, can't pull him all the way to the King Tower, get any jank like that happening. But the players have traded very evenly so far.
Yeah, I mean, 750-ish damage both ways. So things pretty even off the start here. And the elixir leakage for both players relatively low, 0.5 for SB and Lana sitting on 0.9, so slightly higher, but ultimately not too much. A lot of elixir being dumped into the right side right now to counter this push, but it is going to be the counter now from SB, and caught with a small amount of elixir. Lana, she's going to be in trouble, but really well dealt with. And the King Tower activation.
Okay, Fisherman, second time he gets it. Yeah, I thought the cape might be coming out there from the Archer Queen, because if he had to pull that out just as the Hog was pulling over and being able to tank the damage there, could have been some serious damage. Not sure if she used that earlier on, or perhaps that SB just didn't quite have the elixir to pull it out. Either way, always seems to be trying to, have a little bit of a threat on both sides of the board. Okay, Royal Giant is the last card to come out.
It's good to see that there was a tower card available there for SB, however, dealt with by the lightning spell. So the Royal Giant definitely having a good combination with that lightning spell tonight across the two games that we have seen, but it is going to be the counter, heady counter on the right side. The giant skeleton and the hog rider coming in with the earthquake. This is going to be big damage unless the fisherman can put in work, but it's going to be 2 swings for the hog. And is it too late, Genome? I mean, the damage, look at the difference on the board so far.
Yeah, look, he's got a 600 lead, but that's, you know, nowhere really in the realms of, I think, being out of out of contention here. Just needs a really nice push to get back. The hog at the back means this is going to be a big push from SB though, and we know what's going to come out. It's going to be the earthquaking in conjunction with that. The fisherman there, not being able to pull the hog away this time. Okay, I guess he's just committing everything into this one big push to try and make it happen, and unfortunately it all kind of gets crunched at the bridge.
The giant skeleton death damage putting in bits there, but we see the towers so close together. The queen is unfortunately going to have to be drawn to use her ability early. 400 damage is all that separates Lana from coming back here, but SB with the earthquake able to finish things off. And map 1 are very close off the bat. I mean, that was a great way to kick this matchup off.
Yeah, SB just with that relentless hog earthquake pressure there. It didn't matter how high up that tombstone was getting put, always finding a way to get that hog through there. I mean, tombstone, you had the fishermen, the zappies, all of these tools to try and repel that push, but still somehow SB managing to cut through time and time again.
I mean, having the giant skeleton go first over the bridge was obviously a pretty big deciding factor push there. I mean, you deal with that tombstone, you draw a lot of the flak from both the tower and the skeleton spawned by the tombstone, and we saw it multiple times. I mean, the hog was allowed to sort of just slide right on through, most of the time unnoticed, but paired then with the earthquake as well. Any of those skeletons that did sort of take aggro did sort of follow him along. Even the fisherman was slowed down or inevitably killed, which allowed the hog to get off 2-3 swings per hog rider put down, which at the end of the day is more than what that Royal Giant was doing, because I only think we saw it 2-3 times. I mean, it was not there enough to be as prominent as a pushing force.
Well, it was limping every time they got over the bridge, right? Because, SP was just pushing through and doing so well every time that when the Royal Giant was trying to come over that bridge, it wasn't like, remember in the first series we saw tonight, they were coming over there fully healthy with a Dark Prince at their back ready to help out, and this time it was like maybe a half health Royal Giant that was like on a crutch just trying to make their way over the bridge. So all right, we're going to get into the game 2 right away and see if we can get a comeback here from Lana.
Yeah, SB really well done in game number 1 to walk away with that. Obviously, going into the second, none of the cards are going to be the same. So we're going to see a small switch up. Can't really rely on the Hog Rider here. Magic Archer in the back would indicate something interesting, but it is going to be the early Earthquake drawn out. A little bit of a cycle from Lana there. Possibly just trying to rotate to a better defensive card as well as the log. So 2 spells shown pretty early here with the Golden Knight now leading from the back.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a 5-for-4 trade, and you get a couple hundred damage on the tower. I think you take that pretty much every day of the week. But with the Golden Knight coming in here, how is this going to get dealt with? Good cannon placement means that dash from the Golden Knight doesn't connect any further to the tower, and now this cannon cart, you imagine, is just going to get jumped onto the bridge, sitting there kind of uselessly, and the Royal Hogs come out.
There we go. So it's the Royal Hog cycle here from Lana in game number 2. And this is actually a lot of damage going on early. The Queen as well is going to clean up the Royal Ghost. So some good trades there coming out from Lana. But SB on the counter offensive with the Goblin Drill cycle. He's going to get some small damage to start with on the tower. The Golden Knight, though, could make things interesting. Royal delivery there to shut that down, though, in any promise.
And Golden Knight actually gets the dash off. Was that a second dash? Did they actually have time to get that reset on it? Yeah, I mean, they nerfed the amount of time, the cooldown essentially of Golden Knight's abilities. So just reaping the rewards of staying alive for that long and getting that little invincibility to get that last lick of damage onto the tower there.
I mean, you're really well done by SB. He still has 2 cards in pocket to sort of play off of. I'd imagine those are going to be the spells left over for later game pushes, but Lana's going to split the Hogs this time and force a multi-lane push, but the Tornado, there you go, one of the spells to come out, and the King Tower activation. This is going to make things a lot harder for Lana in these last sort of 40 seconds.
Oh, interesting sort of mid-arena earthquake there, and you can tell when a spell like that comes out that things are not going too well, and Lana takes a hefty chunk of damage now, well behind in terms of Princess Tower damage.
It's going to force the Hog split again. It's actually Electro Wizard to find his way onto the battlefield, and this is absolutely amazing defense from SB, only conceding, I think, 200 damage across both towers, but an awesome pre-play Spirit isn't going to actually connect at all, taken out by the Cannon Cart, the Royal Delivery as well, to slow down the Cannon Cart completely. Some good damage dealt from the Magic Archer as well, clearing out that cannon now, so the Golden Knight has a direct avenue onto the tower, provided he doesn't get shut down, and there you go. All the way home. SB in a quick 2-0 fashion.
Yeah, the Golden Knight getting through there on the Archer Queen, just placed a little too far down, the timing of it just a little bit off, and unfortunately it seemed for a lot of the strategies there Lana was trying to employ aggressively and defensively, they just weren't quite enough to stop the slick play there from SB.
Yeah, unfortunately for Lana, she couldn't really turn those pushes into something that needed to be dealt with. It was a very offhand sort of counter-offensive. You saw the Hogs split multiple times there in either a 2-2 or a 3-1 fashion. And ultimately, there was nothing paired in that left lane with those extra Hogs. So they were sort of dealt with by, one card, a 2 elixir drop, something that was a very worth trade for SB. And ultimately, he just bled it out all the way to the end and just kept pushing on through that Golden Knight. I mean, the dash is there. Absolute clutch from the Golden Knight for SB at the end. It could have gone on slightly longer, but I think SB wouldn't have really struggled to close that one out in the end.
Yeah, I think everyone takes that, right? When you get that the 1 elixir for the dashing dash at the end and grab some tower damage from it. Very happy to see that. So looking at the stats for that one, Lana with a much lower cycle there on the deck. You can see 7 elixir for a 4-card cycle, but unfortunately, the cheap and cheerful deck doesn't quite add up.
Cheap decks are a very 50-50 affair, I find. Obviously, you trade a lot of your elixir cost to keep things down for health points. You don't really have too many tanky cards. You don't have any heavy hitters. The only thing that we really saw there as a lifeline for Lana was those Royal Hogs, and they were pretty much just decimated every time they made it over onto the other side of the playing field. So you got to have the nice medium, and I think SB sort of found that medium with the 3.8 there. So, I mean, decks, it was interesting to see how they played out, but ultimately no real surprises given the costs and given how they played out. But for deck number 1, I think it was more of an even matchup, especially with the Skeleton King Graveyard.
Yeah, so we are getting a good look now at the decks employed by the 2 players. There's the Royal Giants going up against the Skeleton Kings, 2 of the big tanks that we see a lot, or we have seen a lot so far in Season 1 of the Clash Cup here at LPL Pro. Why don't we have a look at Deck 2 as well? And there we go. You can see a couple of other interesting cards coming through the Cannon Cart.
Yeah, very, very interesting and different decks from what we sort of maybe expected going into the second game, given that there wasn't really much to work with after using a lot of those bigger cards in game number 1, or should I say the more meta cards maybe. But other than that, no real surprise, if we're being honest. SB had a really good showing in week 1, kept that appearance up for week 2. So unfortunately for Lana, that is going to be the end of the road, and our second player eliminated.
Yeah, we salute you. Lana, thank you for joining us in our top 16 here. And look, thank you for joining us for our first 2 games. We're going to be back soon, but we'll just take a short break now before we get into the rest of the matches.
My world is my storytelling.
My world is diverse.
Our world.
My world is astrophysics.
It's always been a dream of mine.
I don't know what my career pathway will be.
I approach architecture from the point of view of my culture.
I want to contribute to my people.
It's a way I can give back.
I want to change the perception of engineers.
I want to take my tohu home when I graduate.
Right now, it's about me.
And this is my chapter.
How to do nothing. Gaming is a great way to do nothing with your mates. Best part is, you can pretend you're in the NBA. Even when you're in your stepdad's garage.
All right, welcome back, guys. We've seen two awesome matches so far, and we've said goodbye to two competitors already. It's been a good start to the night, Proto.
Yeah, it has definitely been a great start so far. Paraldex and SB both taking things out in pretty quick succession. 2 O's right out the gate. No real surprise. I mean, we're taking a very similar road to what we saw last week. So if history repeats itself, it'll be a 2-1 in the next game. But I mean, we don't know yet, do we, Genome? So
no, yeah. Look, that's all we've had from those first 2 matches. Why don't we have a look at the head-to-head from our next match here? So match 3 still hanging around in that lower bracket, and we've got Orange Blizzard versus Proxy this time. And as you can see, Proxy at least picking up a win in the first week of matches. Orange Blizzard still looking to put that chalk on the board.
Yeah, Proxy had a pretty decent week 1, obviously taking it all the way to those 3 maps. So had a bit more success in terms of how that play came out for him in week 1. But already early on here, 30 seconds in, we've seen a couple of cards revealed and a King Tower activation for Proxy.
Yeah. So you can see where by the region that Rage Spell was falling down in, that he managed to tornado that Lumberjack all the way to the King Tower. So Proxy going to be happy about that. Okay. The Boulder's coming out. Interesting.
We did see a bowler in week 1 and was actually really annoying to deal with on the other end of the field. Elite Barbs here split at the back as well, with the Graveyard now teased from Proxy as well. So an interesting deck lineup. I don't imagine this is looking like the Skeleton King, but with the Lumberjack as well. No, it might be. There you go. Graveyard as well with the bowler, or it could just be Graveyard bowler. We don't know. But the freeze spell, this is going to be big. Here comes
the zap. Oh, that's exactly the spell you want in that scenario. That said, it still did a good amount of damage, Proto. I mean, he's taken about half the health off the tower. The counter push is nowhere to be seen, really. He's even going to get the free hit from that bar barrel.
That's huge. Bowl, there we go. Nightwitch Golem, second time we've seen that deck combo here for the tournament so far. So it's going to be interesting to see what he stacks up behind the Golem. Will he split the Elite Barbs again? Because the bowler is going to make things difficult. Obviously, with that sort of continuated splash damage all the way through, whatever he stacks behind it is going to start taking some pretty big damage. But he's actually looking to sort of just look like he wants to let it go with the lone bomber here.
Yeah, we can see the tombstones ready in there. That's going to cause enough trouble to make those Golemites pop. Death damage not on the tower either, but a fair few swings coming through from the Lumberjack there, and the Rage Spell also getting on top of the Elite Barbs, which is exactly how you want to play that. Unfortunately, the bowler is a pretty good response to that. Once again, Freeze coming out on top. This time we've all got arrows as well, arrows and zap, so he doesn't need the unit so much with those spells to deal with that graveyard.
Yeah, he actually has some pretty good spell utility in the bank to deal with that, and has dealt with it a lot better the second time around as opposed to the first. But we already see now the issue is going to be is can he keep those spells in rotation, because this is the second time in 30 seconds we've seen that graveyard come out with the bowler and oops as well, so it's not looking good. He's going to hold on for OT here, but 500 damage is not a lot to try and keep yourself in overtime.
No, and it just feels like Proxy has been so clinical with his graveyard bowler pushes. Chucked a freeze on top of that, and it feels like Orange Blizzard, sure, he can stop too much damage coming out, but you have to let the skeletons stack up by that point if you're trying to clear them with the arrows and the zap. So the arrows come out just to deal with all this spam at the bridge, and by that point, the baby dragon already finding its way onto the tower, and the freeze is going to be the end of it. So a really solid start there from Proxy. Bowler, graveyard, freeze, it's a combo you probably see in ladder a bit as well, I think. So it's not necessarily just like, a pro-only deck that really needs one of those skilled pilots, but obviously the way that Proxy was using it there certainly lends itself to that.
Yeah, Proxy pretty much had that down to a T. It's probably, a ladder main deck, as you've mentioned. It's not one that you usually would see in a competitive lineup given the current meta, but I mean, really, really strong, regardless of its current stance in the meta, based on what was being bought there on the other end. Proxy pretty much had a perfect counter. I mean, there wasn't really too much going on other than the one time the Lumberjack got on that they really needed to worry about. I mean, Proxy was pretty comfortable there, just relying on the bowler to sort of clean things up. Paired with the tornado as well, made things really hard.
Yeah, and what do you think about using that as a first deck? Because I feel, I'm trying to think about, what could have countered that deck. Maybe a poison spell. So it's a bit of a gamble to have that deck first, and then, rather than perhaps keeping in your back pocket until you've already seen that poison spell come out in one of the other decks.
I mean, poison spell. We only saw it, I believe, twice last week, so we haven't seen too much poison so far for the tournament, and I think having that deck off the bat would probably have been the best choice, given that it is the lower bracket. So people are going to be expecting about as meta as it gets because everyone is going to be wanting to hold on to those positions. It's we've got to have the Skeleton King, we've got to have the cycle decks, we've got to have everything on point. And to chuck in the bowl of freeze with the tornado, it definitely made things interesting for game number one. But Proxy, I think having bargaining himself walking away with that and bringing that deck game one is definitely going to set him up for well for game number two, because keep in mind, arrows and zap are gone on the other side of the card. So that is two of your low-cost clear-out spells already used.
Yeah, you got to remember, sure, log is there. We'll see if that comes through in game two here. So that and snowball, I suppose, are the other options you're going to think about. The Skelly Barrel to start off with will actually get a fair bit of damage done on this Hunter, but no tower damage just yet. The Cannon Cart doesn't have the NOS on it like it used to. It's a little bit slower, but in the right hands, it can be pretty good.
Well, that, and it turns into a sort of a mobile building to some degree. The Queen is going to have to, again, force out that ability, but with the Dark Prince, that's going to be a really good counter to that push. I mean, relatively similar elixir costs, so not too much in terms of a trade there, but now with the Royal Giant coming down the right lane, it's going to be interesting. The guards and the Hunter to counter, though, it only means that two shots are going to get off, so not too much loss there.
A second Cloaking Cape for the Archer Queen, though. Every time one of these champion cards gets that second, ability off, it always seems to do a lot of damage. But I say that, does that really matter when you've got, once again, the clone spell really surprising us here? And it's just, I think that's only the second time we've seen it come out in Season 1 here, and both times we've seen that, it has resulted in instant tower death.
Instant tower death. I mean, wow. Skeleton Barrel clone spell. And it was just read so perfectly because there was nothing left in terms of splash on the board for Proxy. Didn't really have anything available on hand to deal with that. I mean, the skeletons came down, but they were just absolutely minced in the wave of skeletons there. So really well read into by Orange Blizzard. Good elixir management too. And this is now going to allow him to do something possibly here on the left side, but given that he has also unfortunately now fumbled the elixir a little bit, it's going to be countered pretty easily.
Oh, man, it's really brutal seeing that Hunter get put down next to the Royal Giant, isn't it? Two shots the Royal Giant, I think, or at least close to with any kind of damage from the Princess Tower. So it's been very successful so far. Doesn't quite either feel like it or decide to use the clone spell there, as the Skeleton Barrel does make its way onto the tower. The Archer Queen, I was waxing lyrical about how good it was that, they've got two capes in, but here we go, the tornado on top of the double skeleton death bombs, and it's death for Proxy in game two.
Yeah, Proxy, unfortunately, he's not going to be able to do too much, or at least even if he could, he doesn't really want to. It's GG, go next. And that is going to be the first 3 crown of the night. What an answer back there from Orange Blizzard. I mean, the clone spell, again, coming out of the woodwork and proving that it may only be a spell, but when given to the right someone and used in the right way, you don't want to be going up against it.
It's tough, man. I mean, even compared to, say, freeze, you're always getting, like, guaranteed value out of freeze, right, when you're stopping those towers in their tracks. But clone, it's almost the same kind of way, and it's trying to, really just pinch them at a specific point in time. But it feels like it's a lot harder to get going, a lot harder to use than freeze, because you need that perfect window to just creep through. And, yeah, I mean, like, the skeletons, it doesn't matter if they're cloned, right, because they take 1 tick of damage anyway. I mean, they're just as strong as they are in clone form as they are in their normal form.
Yeah, but I think the pairing for that deck there from Orange Blizzard was the fact that he had not only the skeleton barrel to pair with the clone, but also the giant skeleton. I mean, we only saw the giant skeleton get cloned that one time at the end there, but it completely cleaned out that whole left lane of anything that would have been going back over the bridge. Let's be honest, there wasn't anything that was going to make it anyway, but it was an absolutely insane use of the clone spell and a perfect highlight as to how strong it can be in the right hands. But for game number 3, the log, which arguably Proxy may have wanted in game number 1, it's going to be Orange Blizzard to bring it out here early in game 2.
Yep.
3.
100%. We are tied up 1-1 here. This is the deciding game to see which one of these two players will be making their way home, which one will be moving forward in the tournament. So, okay, wall breakers, minus, already seen those win conditions come out so far from Proxy. The Skeleton King was going to bring that guy up because we hadn't seen him so far yet in the in this whole series between the two players. Mother Witch against Bats, you love to see that. Gets a couple of hog hits out.
Yeah, the Mother Witch has actually sent that hog down the left lane, and it's got a couple of hits off before being taken down, but it's going to be interesting to see how this deck works out for Orange Blizzard. Obviously not having Zap or Arrows against a cycle deck with those sort of cheap win conditions. He does have the Skeleton Army available and the log, but Proxy, Proxy's going to struggle with it.
So he gets the Skeleton King down just as his Skami is running to its death. Of course, that fully charges up the Skeleton King, so he's ready to bring his full complement of skeletons with him as soon as he gets over that bridge. Will that work with the bomb tower already placed there? Not sure, Proto, but it's actually that Knight actually bought him enough time that he can get something else happening off the back of this. Okay, I'm really surprised that he didn't opt to use that there.
Yeah, I mean, Bomb Tower, we saw it in week 1, was such a great counter to Skeleton King because the summons that he obviously brings, as you've already mentioned, they are 1 health regardless. And then on top of that, the Bomb Tower just does a very significant amount of damage. So having it go down here and having it possibly not in the cycle, there we go, he's going to have to cycle it back just to stop this Royal Giant. But that is probably the best thing he could have done because already Royal Giant, again, just being shut down at the bridge.
Yeah, and I was just about to say that the RG wasn't actually in range of the Princess Tower then, but you know, it was definitely the right call. Took no damage from the RG onto the tower, and the log coming out at the right time. He knows that the Skami is what Orange Blizzard wants to defend with now, so Proxy definitely needs to be saving that to try and clear it out at the opportune time, one by one. These goblins meeting their end at the end of the Fisherman's Hook here. The wall breakers on the left-hand side, will they get through? Not this time.
Yeah, the wall breakers haven't really had too much success here in this matchup so far, but I mean, this is going to be a pretty big right lane focus now. The Mother Witch has got a couple of hog downs, and the Royal Giant right in front again. He's just got this cycle constantly coming through, but the bomb tower is there and ready. It's going to be able to shut down everything in this right lane. No hits on tower for both Royal Giants, and our hard counter on the right side now paired with the early log. This could be big damage.
Both players doing a fantastic job of defending right now. Chip damage at best is only what we're seeing. The Skeleton King, time and time again, is fully charging up his Soul Summon ability, but Orange Blizzard still hasn't hit the trigger. Even then, when he managed to be, essentially it was just cycling Royal Giants on top of each other towards the end. But as fast as he can get them up, bomb towers are coming back the other way.
Did see one hit there for the Royal Giant go off, so some good damage dealt on the right, which actually now puts Orange Blizzard in the lead, but not comfortably by any means. Still has to try and get through what Proxy is dropping on this right lane here, and with this
the predictive log!
Perfect!
And wall breakers!
And a wall breaker on, allowing all that damage to come on through. Big mistake in OT here.
Okay, well now we're into triple elixir time, and that beautiful log has actually put Proxy in the lead. The Royal Giant with 40 seconds left needs to come through. He's just letting free damage go on that left-hand side. He knows that's probably not where he needs to focus now. That said, both towers on about 2,000, but 6, maybe even 500 points ahead. Finally, the RG getting a couple of hits in a matter of seconds. Orange Blizzard with the big boy is coming back out on top.
This is huge. I'd imagine probably game here if this Royal Giant connects. Indeed it will. And it's looking good. 1 hit, 2 hits. Not enough, though. The log's going to come out and put it dangerously lower now at 140. But OT is about to end, and I think it might come down. No, there we go. The fireball to finish things off. Orange Blizzard in the last 10 seconds. I mean, that was pretty clutch. But both of those decks, I mean, really, really well constructed.
Yeah, and you can see how, the change to having overtime be triple elixir and just how that shifts the game, right? Both players were defending so well through one elixir, single elixir time, that was fine. Double elixir time, that's fine. Unfortunately, through each of those shifts, the decks, how they cycle, how they play, they change completely. And we see in triple elixir time, that's when Orange Blizzard's deck really kicked into gear, and unfortunately, went from only taking a few licks of damage to completely falling apart in that last minute.
Yeah, having the ability to just sort of drop that Royal Giant, just Royal Giant, all at the bridge, and having everything stack up behind it. I mean, the bomb tower, yes, it was there in cycle, but at the end, there were that many cards building up behind the Royal Giant that we just saw the bomb tower get absolutely wiped out. That's when the half-health Royal Giant sort of went to town. We got it down to that sort of 400 area, 200 area, fireball to finish things off. Really well done by Blizzard. I mean, second game, absolutely cleaned up with the clone spell trick, but going into the third, just had to wait for the elixir advantage, and ultimately the patience is what won him that game.
Well, it was a solid effort there from Proxy getting all the way to game 3, but unfortunately he is also leaving us now with $200 to his name. But we've still got one more elimination match coming up tonight in the lower bracket. Why don't we head and have a look at the head-to-head for our fourth game of the lower bracket. It's going to be Octurne versus Barn.
Barn had a pretty rough week number 1 going up against Fitchy straight away, and that probably, arguably actually, I would say, was the most dominant game in week number 1 that we saw. I mean, Barn had a couple of good moments in that matchup, but Fitchy, I mean, there was no other word to describe it other than absolute dominance. And Fitchy was looking really good. But Barn, unfortunately, that then put him down in this lower bracket where we will see him going up against Octurne, who also had a pretty good first week. So it's going to be interesting to see how these two players sort of duke it out, because both didn't really get a chance to show what they were fully made of in the first play day.
Yeah, look, they were unknown quantities last week. Now that we've seen a little bit of them, as you said, we were struggling to decipher whether it was Fitchy being a god or Barn, really not having done his homework. So I think off the back of that, I'm definitely expecting Octurne to come out on top here. But I think we've also seen some dramatic improvements from some of these players who I think played the first week and realized, what level they were playing at in this tournament and what they needed to bring. So why don't we head into the first game between these guys and see?
I'll be honest, I'm expecting some possible cycles off the bat. I mean, we did see it for Barn against Fitchy, ultimately countered pretty quickly. Valkyrie, though, an interesting choice, but not one that I am sad to see from Octurne here. And the Goblin Cage to come out to counter really well. So far, pretty slow off, but with the Skeleton King in the back, things are looking pretty on meta for Octurne right off the get-go here. With the Electro Giant, first time, I'm excited.
Yeah, look, definitely a favorite card for me as well. With the buffs recently, we were expecting to see it maybe slightly more than we have so far. Okay, the Inferno Dragon comes in now. If this is placed right, and obviously you can see that the Royal Giant is going to go towards the left because that's where the Tombstone is placed, but with a nice Tornado, that means the Inferno Dragon is no longer in the right place. That said, doesn't even make it onto the tower, just is a bit of a pest in the meantime.
That right there highlights how strong Electro Giant is. I mean, he had 4 different cards on top of him, killed 2 of them, and the majority of the third before actually being taken down. This is going to be interesting, provided that Barn can actually build up a sufficient push here behind the Electro Giant, because that was only the Electro Giant going down the right lane there. He didn't have any support. So provided that Barn can build this push up now, possibly down this right lane with the Skeleton King to face, things are going to be very scary here for Octurne unless he has a good way to defend this. Still 2 unknown for him and 3 unknown for Barn. So some possible spanners.
Okay, well, one of them going to be the Inferno Dragon in response. Lightning, another one. The mystery is being revealed now. This time doesn't use the Tornado to suck the Inferno Dragon into the realm of the Electro Giant's backpack there. So as a result, doesn't even get through Tombstone. Skeletons of his own has to worry about now as they start spawning next to the Princess Tower and chipping away. There's one at the back there who did a very good job, and there's that poison we talked about. This time though, it is of course an aggressive one. It's in response with the Graveyard.
Really well used, really good poison utility there from Octurne, and ultimately some good damage there as well onto that tower. I mean, the Mother Witch was allowed to get off a lot of those hogs, but ultimately just cleaned up the bridge, meant that it wasn't really too much of an issue. But it's going to be another attempt with the Electro Giant here. Some good damage, but this poison's going to be massive. The Electro Giant's not going to get anywhere near the tower. The hogs are actually going to be the thing that are doing the damage right now, as 2-3 of them connect now for some good damage.
Yeah, they do, and they even things up as well. The tanks get across the bridge. They're immediately met by a Goblin Cage as the Princess Tower is allowed to refocus onto the spawning skeletons. The Mother Witch comes out just in time to get 2 hogs off. Now we saw, as you said last time, they were the ones doing the damage. 3 hogs. They don't quite make it to the tower. The Valkyrie is a good response to this. The Bomber keeps getting taken out before it's time, really. Tornadoes, the arrows actually were the ones that were usually bring it forward, and it's able to clear out some of that span here, but once again, a good job by Octurne.
Really well defended. That Electro Giant is yet to make it to the tower. We will see the summon ability here come out from the Skeleton King as well. He's dealt with pretty quickly, but the damage has been dealt a little bit, not a lot. The poison actually doing majority of it. The counter push here for the right lane isn't going to be as strong. That poison able to clear up 2 of those sort of cards remaining in the poison, but the Electro Giant might actually make it on here for the first time. Indeed he will. He's going to get close, and how many hits? That's 1. The lightning spell as well, and that is actually going to be tower there for Barn.
A big comeback there right at the end. That was very interesting. I mean, was it the Tombstone that was missing? I'm trying to work out how exactly that Electro Giant made it through there. What was so different to all those other pushes, Proto?
The Dark Prince was placed in the middle, jumped over the lake, smashed down the Tombstone, and the Electro Giant obviously wasn't aggroed on the tower because it was dealt with, so allowed it to get right on down that right lane, 2 hits off, as well as obviously the electric damage completely and utterly wiped that tower out. But it just, that Electro Giant, it's so potent. You put it down and it's pretty much a walking fortress. I mean, we saw it deal with 2, 3, 4 counter cards at a time on its lonesome without any support. And then when when Barnes started putting those extra cards behind, there wasn't really much left to do other than hope that you could slow that Electro Giant down.
Yeah, so, recognizing that the lightning wasn't maybe necessary in the end, and changing it up, switching it up, putting the Dark Prince in, giving him extra oomph before finally finishing him off completely with the lightning in triple elixir time. So yeah, look, a very good showing there from Barn. How many decks has he been practicing, Proto? Was it just the one, just the 2 aces up his sleeve? Because that's all you need. If it gets to the 3rd, will he still be kicking? We'll have to see, I guess. Octurne, now he's back against the wall, and can't lose another game.
Has a good chance to equalize here. Obviously, the decks are going to have to switch up. The Skeleton King combo is gone for Octurne. That is going to allow Barn to sort of bring that out, should he want to choose to bring that style of meta deck out. I mean, we've seen it, again, pretty much 100% play rate here, of minimum 1 game from everything that we've seen tonight. So I wouldn't be surprised if Barn actually brings it out here for game 2. But the Electro Giant is definitely something I'm interested as to whether or not we will see more of now that someone has actually bought it in a game.
Yeah, not only bought it, but succeeded with it as well. Okay, the Zap is going to be the first cycle card to come through as his players look for their opening salvo to come out. Dark Goblin played in the back. Definitely can't let that get onto the tower. It'll get 3-4 hits in. It's going to be the snowball to finish it off.
There we go. It only gets one hit off, so really good there. The dual snowball to come out. Both of these players,
man, these are
somewhat hesitant to drop one of their big cards early on. I mean, we saw this a little bit from Barn in the previous week, so it's no surprise that he's sort of pulling off the same sort of thing. Both players not really wanting to make the first move, but it's pretty even, you know, in terms of what's been leaked so far. Not too much has been lost. So the guards, they're going to get a couple of hits off as well. So far, Octurn's actually found himself in a pretty good position, but Barn really hesitant for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, the Miner doesn't strike me as a card that you're wanting to hold back on. I guess what's happening here is that the players just have decks that they think are maybe more successful in double elixir time, so they're just going to wait for that, you know, that extra elixir tick to come through at you know, 59 seconds and start popping it then. No, okay, it's just a random 1:30 start time. This is okay. This is where I really wish we had the you know, the player cams up and running. So we could see them just, you know, like kicking back, maybe you know, scrolling, checking something else on their phone in the meantime, or.
It's an interesting strategy. I've got no clue why we're seeing both of these players just hold out on literally anything. It is double elixir now though, so we're going to see if this means anything. The Valkyrie is going to be deployed in the back, the Dark Goblin on the other side for Octurne. So Barn possibly building up something big here. There you go. It is going to be the Lumberloon coming down the left side, but it's going to be met by the Tombstone. This is going to be interesting though. The Flying Machine Lava Hound is going to spice things up. This Balloon's going to get possibly 3 hits off here with the Rage Spell. No, only 2, but that is big damage in OT.
Very good. So, okay, now you can totally understand, you know, a Lava Hound committing that much that early is tough. We see Freeze with Lumberloon coming through. That's also something that you want to do after the other player has committed a large expenditure of Elixir, exactly like the Lava Hound that we saw. And you know exactly why when you can see it done. It's done more than a half tower's worth of damage there. So all starting to make sense here as the second balloon does come into play. The Rage Spell actually a little bit too far to the right, so nice work drawing the Lumberjack further right, but the Freeze Spell perfectly timed.
Perfect.
And 6 seconds into overtime, we're going to have a result.
Really well done by Octurne there. Great elixir management sort of going into that first few seconds of overtime. And it does make sense why both players were holding out for an extended period to sort of keep those cards close to their chest. Yeah. They just wanted to get a little bit of chip damage in here or there. But then when it hit sort of that double elixir, it was just all hands on deck. Everything was going on. We had pushes in the left, pushes in the right. No real surprise given the 2 decks that we saw, but the Lumberloon with the Freeze ultimately coming out on top. I mean, Lumberjack just seems to be a really potent card in pretty much any deck you put him in.
Yeah, big fan of the you know, the body plus the spell kind of you know, form factor of some of those legendary cards. Electro Wiz as well, of course, sort of fitting into that category. But yeah, you can just imagine that Octurne was sitting there with his finger on the Lumberjack, just like placed next to the bridge, just being like, come on, please send something big. And that is exactly what he got. As soon as that Lava Hound came out, you knew there was going to be a big exchange of tower damage there.
Oh, yeah. As soon as they see that big card go down, especially playing a deck like Lumberloon, you've just got to commit to our side. And ultimately, that is what happened. Octurne just waited for that big hitter to come down. I think he knew that something big was going to happen, whether or not it was going to be Golem, whether it was going to be Lava Hound. You know, no real surprise. But that's the second time we've seen Lava Hound in the tournament so far, which then raises the question, is Lava Hound going to make a return? Because it's been a pretty decent card so far. I mean, yes, the victory wasn't in favour of Barn there, but, I mean, it could be a prospect for the future.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Default bring out Lumberloon last week. You know, maybe not the Lumberjack balloon, but, you know, in that similar sort of vein. Now, the players, I hope, as we were talking about, have practiced all 3 of those decks, because it's the last chance to make it count here. Last chance to stay in the tournament. The minions deal with both Golden Knight. Okay, interesting. Was that? I guess that was the cycle zap there, just to go through. Ooh, Okay, now, we saw the Elixir Pump last week. What did it mean, Proto?
It meant that we were going to see 3 Musketeers, and whether or not that is the same case for Barn here is an interesting question, but the Giant in the back, so it definitely, I think, has shaped up to be the 3 Musketeers deck. With that Giant, with the 3 Muskets, with the Pump, we could definitely see that happen, but no, Giant Sparky.
Okay. All right, well...
We actually did see Barn bring Sparky last week as well.
So the Golden Knight could dash onto that, but no, it doesn't opt to go for that with the minions there on the top. Oh, they can't quite get through them. The Tornado doesn't do enough damage. A second shot from the Sparky is going to go onto the cannon, but the third one hits home onto the tower and almost takes it down after that. Goblin Gang just doing enough to get in front.
Perfect. That is what we wanted to see last week. Fitchy had the perfect deck to counter the Sparky in the previous play day, but Octurne did not have what he needed there to deal with that issue, and Barn, he's going to walk away with it. But there we go. Second Electro Giant of the night. Maybe it's a trend setter here, but it's going to be a hard right lane counter, so he can try and deny the build-up of a push on the left side here. Obviously, the Electro Giant is very potent, but it's the Mirror to come out. 2 Electro Giants on the field. Things are going to be very scary here for Barn, but Sparky's going to have to carry a lot of weight.
A little bit hard to do that when it's in pieces on the ground. The Barbarians are deployed left to deal with the level 11 Electro Giant, but the level 13 Electro Giant makes its way to the tower, and certainly punching above its weight is doing massive damage right now. It'll be followed up immediately by its younger cousin.
This is going to be difficult for Barn. He needs to deal with this Electro Giant. It's doing that electric tick damage. He's got another one coming down. This is
you don't need any other cards, Proto. It's just Electro Giant after Electro Giant. Okay, well, that said, it's only even things up. This Bomber going to town. The pushback from Sparky. It's in the right lane right now. Goblin Gang. Oh my god, that rocket was fantastic. Just cleaning up, and we're almost back to a reset, back to evens. Before that Giant got a couple of whacks on that tower. The 4 Electro Giants in a row, it kind of felt like. Certainly did the job for Octurne, but he's got to find his way into that space again. It's not easy to get the cycle correct for that to occur.
This rocket as well has just been absolutely massive with a 6-6 trade. For Octurne, I mean, he's just countering Sparky, but I mean, the Gang going to town on the left tower as well as the Giant on the King Tower. Octurne not looking the healthiest of what's left on the board here. The Electro Giant is going to make things interesting. Kited by the Elixir Pump, though. Very well played by Barn.
Love that use of the Elixir Pump there, recognizing he's not really going to get all that much out of it. The rocket's coming for it most of the time, but if he can distract the Electro Giant, that's what's important. He doesn't want 2 to be able to be played in a row, of course. And now that he's got the tower down to 700 health, remember, he's only got Zap as a spell. He has to get through with his units, Proto. Oh no!
Oh no!
What do you do? What do you do?
Holding out on the placement there of any cards. Barn, he's now got 2 Electro Giants to stare down the barrel of. Rocket to come home as well. Not really too much that you can do in that situation at all. Octurne with the Mirror Electro Giant deck. Barn definitely not happy with what just went down there at all. I mean, Sparky a great counter, but if you can never have him on the board, what's the point?
Yeah, I really think the way to punch through that was to just almost play it like you're playing a bridge spam deck or something like that, right? Because essentially you just don't want them to be able to build up enough time and space and elixir to be able to play those 2 Electro Giants in a row. Because of course, if you're playing Mirror, you can't play them later. You have to do it in a row. And with 600 health left on the tower, just chuck some stuff in there. Try play a Giant like on the opposite side of the lane. I don't know, something like that to force them to just keep playing cards and not be able to build up that huge amount of elixir to get the big push going.
Yeah, we didn't see anything. I mean, the Electro Giant was pretty much halfway down the lane there, and he, there was no cards placed. So a bit of an interesting choice on the defense side there, but the Electro Giant already proving tonight why he is probably one of the most potent cards in competitive Clash right now.
or even two of the most competitive cards if you play it right. Okay, well, that's our lower bracket done for tonight, guys. So we've seen 4 people eliminated so far. 4 move on to the next round of the lower bracket. We're going to be back tonight with the big guns, those ones who made it through into the winners bracket and haven't dropped a series yet. We'll go to a short break now, guys. I'll be back and join us for that.
My world is my storytelling.
My world is diverse.
Our world.
My world is astrophysics.
It's always been a dream of mine.
I don't know what my career pathway will be.
I approach architecture from the point of view of my culture.
I want to contribute to my people.
It's a way I can give back.
I want to change the perception of engineers.
I want to take my tohu home when I graduate.
Right now, it's about me.
And this is my chapter.
How to do nothing. Gaming is a great way to do nothing with your mates. Best part is, you can pretend you're in the NBA. Even when you're in your stepdad's garage.
Welcome back, everybody. We are getting into the second half of tonight and seeing some of the winners bracket action coming up. But you know how else you could be a winner? Why don't you fasten your seatbelts for a spin around the Sky Tower with their new VR experience, the Sky Slide. Purchase your tickets online and use the promo code LPL Slide, and you'll get 10% off your Sky Slide bundles until the 30th of August. If you want more info, just use !Sky Slide in chat, guys. All right. Well, we're going to get into the winners bracket any moment now, Proto. But why don't we just throw our minds back to the lower brackets and just have a quick recap of what we've seen so far tonight?
Some pretty insane games, Genome. We've seen Electro Giant twice. We saw a lot of that on Meta Skeleton King deck, so I'm not really surprised. But the lower bracket, pretty interesting this evening. 2 2-0s and 2 2-1s. So 50-50 split in terms of how quick the games have been so far this evening, but some interesting comeuppances in the lower bracket going forward into next week.
Yeah, there was some fun little back and forth there with the 2-2-1s at the end. But that's it for those players for now. We've said goodbye to those 4, and we will see who's going to stamp their name even further as we look at the upper bracket tonight and some of the really scary players in this tournament. Certainly the ones we've mentioned already tonight. You were talking a lot about Fitchy, Proto.
Yeah, Fitchy has definitely shown to be one of, I would say, in the first play days, the most dominant, given, you know, just the level that he was bringing in his game against Barnes. So it'll be interesting to see if he keeps that up this evening. But that isn't going to be our first matchup. That's actually going to be the one for later on, Gino.
Yeah, we'll get that one towards the end of the night. But why don't we have a look at the head-to-head to show you who we are going to see coming up first here in our first winners bracket match. So it's going to be Lemons versus Zulnino. I'm very excited about this one. As you can see, both 100% win rate. They had clean 2-0 victories to start the tournament off with. Lemons with some of the best defense we have seen in this tournament thus far.
Yeah, I mean, even going up against completely mismatched decks, Lemons was just absolutely handing it out on defense. You just could not crack his crown towers at all. I believe he only dropped 1, like, in the whole matchup. I don't even know. He might not have even dropped 1 tower. I think he had all 4 at the end. So Lemons, defensively speaking, the best defensive player we've seen so far for our tournament. But Zulnino had a pretty big showing for his first play as well. A 2-0 against Paladex, sending him down to the lower bracket. So Zulnino has some pretty big shoes that he is filling currently as well going into this matchup.
Yeah, both players certainly have made a case for themselves being the strong one there. Lemons, as we talked about, just surgical, clinical. He's a fortress. He finished one of the games with both of his Princess Towers above 2,000 health each. You know, if that doesn't tell you enough about how hard it is just to find a chink in this guy's armor, well, I hope Zulnino has done his homework and has tried to put together a couple of decks that can maybe exploit a weakness that we didn't see in the first week.
Yeah, we definitely saw Lemons lean more into that cycle style of gameplay. So whether or not he's going to go straight back to those grassroots or whether or not he's going to try something else here this evening against Zulnino is an interesting prospect. But Genome, so far, again, both players, similar to what we saw in the last matchup, just waiting for the other to make the first move.
I don't have to wait quite as long this time. And we're seeing the Skelly Barrel come out, which we have already seen be fairly successful thus far. So Lemons is going again with the Rascals. So now when we saw this last time, we saw a very similar deck. Maybe it's the same one last week, and it was actually the Gob Barrel Skelly Barrel with Mirror as well. So we could see some fun stuff come there. Oh, and that was a pretty fun tornado. Perfect. Oh, damn. And this Electro Giant is probably going to be paid to that tower right now. Lemons, I think he's just lost the title of best defender of the season.
Yeah, the Electro Giant, you know, continuing on from that right lane, he's going to actually do pretty much almost 1,000 damage on the King Tower as well. But Lemons is going to do his best to get right back into it. However, countered right off the bat for a 1- elixir trade, and it's just not happening. But there we go. There's the mirror. So very interesting sort of lineup here. Again, that cycle we talked about, it's definitely something he's comfortable with, but a lot of damage dealt. Well dealt with, though, by Zornino, who already has 1 tower to his name, but Lemons now has to play catch-up.
Yeah, those extra powerful goblins there really doing some damage to that right tower, but as you say, he's so far behind after that one Electro Giant mishap, shall we call it. Bamboo, the Dark Goblin. Why? I don't know why that's in my head, but I just can't get the Bamboo face mask out. It's haunting my dreams, Proto. Either way, it's also haunting Zornino a little bit with just a little bit of chip damage there. The bar comes through again, and this time the Electro Giant is going up against a skeleton army, but that is nothing against him. Guaranteed damage on the tower from that middle position, and even having to let this the baby dragon go to work a little bit too.
I mean, 1,000 damage as well there, almost, from the baby dragon is just absolute bits here for Zornino. It's been interesting to see the Electro Giant have such a big effect this evening, but these barrels, these pre-tornadoes are huge. But look at the left side, the Rascal's going to town. That could be tower. So close, but no, 100 health. This could be the comeback for Lemons. All he has to do is connect one of these goblin barrels. Indeed he will. It's going to go to OT, and with 300 health, this could be big for Lemons. Thanks in the chat. He's going to walk away with it unless he can defend this Giant right now in the last 5 seconds.
The Giant actually goes from the bridge instead of from the middle. Takes a little too long to get to the tower, and Lemons is not shy in letting him know what he thinks about that comeback. There were a lot of emotes there, Proto. There was a lot of feeling. There was a lot of emotion in that match coming out from our players.
Oh, Lemons, that was a close one right off the bat. Losing that right tower just did not deserve to do that. I mean, well, did. I mean, let's be honest. You got to fight for it, and fight for it he did. Those Rascals, 1 card, putting in the utmost amount of work for Lemons there. Shame for Zornino, but big for Lemons.
I mean, I guess you get the theory behind it, right? He's got all these goblin barrels coming in. That means the bar barrel has to be used on some of those, and that means he doesn't have the bar barrel to clear out the girls at the back of the Rascals. So once again, Lemon comes out on top with that. Is undefeated with that deck so far in Season 1 here, but let's see what else he's got to go for. Last time it was a drill bandit cycle. We saw, or I guess a drill cycle deck really in Game 2 for him. This time he's going with the miner.
Yeah, miner cycle, I would imagine, probably here. But again, Lemons, we saw it in week 1. He was so comfortable with that cycle style of play. So no real surprise at all that is the case here. Mega Minion to clean up on the right side. And albeit Lemons, a really good sort of start here to game number 2. The Prince, an interesting choice, though, in the back lanes here. With the Mother Witch is going to make things very spicy, but the Poison's going to be a great counter.
Yeah, now the Poison does completely clear out that Mother Witch, but on the backside, getting a couple of those hogs out. Sure, they don't have the helmets on, but they're still headbutting those towers, and they're still doing damage. Wall Breakers is a quick response. Does he have enough to take that out? Yes, the Valkyrie played quickly, and in response will do the damage there. The Skeleton King, I think was he trying to get the souls up there? Yeah, and does that mean he loses the elixir once he's pressed that button, right?
Yep. That was a unfortunate loss. 2 elixir down the drain for Zornino. However, Lemons not to mount anything too much of a counter-offensive off the back of that. So fortunate for Zornino. Lemons is just going to sort of wait for the charge up here. Still 2 unknown. A Prince in the back on the left is going to spice things up a little bit. The Inferno Dragon to come out to counter. Possibly, I'd imagine, paired with the Tombstone. Wall Breakers on the right. They're going to be used to clear this Tombstone out. The Prince, he's going to be drawn still by the Skeleton. Unfortunately, Snowball not connecting.
Yeah, but he's not really that worried about the Prince because he did get that 1 wall breaker connection on the right there. And thus far, I mean, look, at least in Game 2, he's living up to his reputation there with not a single point of damage going down on either of the Princess Terra. Mega Knight, I think that could be another first for us here.
It is, yeah.
In the Clash Club for ANZ. Finally getting some love. He's going to jump on over to the right-hand side while he's worrying about what to do on the sorry, on the left-hand side, was worrying about what to do on the right as the Mother Witch once again gets some of those hogs into the action.
Miner just going to work at the back there. Not really too much that Zornino can do about it. And look at the damage. I mean, 1,000 forfeit there. The Prince as well to possibly get a joust. No, taken down just in time by the Archers. So really good for Lemons. Going to be going into OT here. Now the question is Zornino, can he build this push up at the back that the Mega Knight is coming down the same lane?
About to go into overtime now. 1,000 damage is the most we've seen on any of these towers, and all of a sudden it's a big push on the left-hand side for Lemons. Does he have enough to deal with this tombstone and let those damage dealers at the back get through the Mega Knight and the Knight trying to do their darndest, but it's actually some of the smaller units that will get there, while meanwhile the Miner at the back there also doing some decent damage.
Another 1,000 damage there as well. The Prince actually getting a lance off just before being taken down by the Skeleton King. The offensive now on the left. Will he get the summon off before being dealt with? I don't even think he's going to try. Mega Knight to counter, and very quickly this left lane just gets filled up by Lemons, and this Miner constantly chipping away in the back left there. Things for Zornino getting pretty dire. And with those wall breakers connecting, things are all over Red Rover Lemons with the Dancing Skeleton. It's going to be a quick 2-0.
Sneaky little skeletons getting through with some explosives there to blow up Zornino's chances of making it any further in the winner's bracket right there. So nice job by Lemons. It was a shaky start. I don't know if he didn't predict that the Electro Giant was the kind of card that he'd be coming up against, Proto, but it really gave him some trouble. But damn if he didn't bring it back.
Yeah, I mean, that first game was an absolute sort of just highlight of how Clash Royale can be very back and forth. I mean, at that first sort of 30 seconds, that tower goes down. It's like, well, this is going to be pretty hard given he's playing a cycle deck, which consistently has very cheap, very sort of squishy cards going up against that Electro Giant. Things, and the Dark Prince, keep in mind, things were going to be very difficult, but really well done. Then going into game 2, just kept that cycle pace up, something that he is really good at, and that defense sort of came back into that whole aspect of Lemons' play style. And there you go, 2-0. I mean, Lemon, he's keeping up appearances going into and securing himself the upper bracket spot for week 3.
Awesome job there by Lemons. Our first person getting ahead into the what's that? I guess the third round of the winner's bracket there. But anyway, moving on to the next batch now. We'll have a look at some of the info we've got on our second winner's bracket match here from Default and Shek Pro.
Yeah, Shek had a pretty interesting game last week going up against Lana. She gave him a run for his money. It was the full 3 rounds, but Shek coming out on top in the end, taking down the Lava Loon. So probably going to see him implement those sort of more meta decks. We saw him playing the Skeleton King. We saw him playing sort of the giant sides of things, the Hog Riders. So no real surprise there that he walked away with the dub, staying on meta, as opposed to what we saw from Lana, which was more of that sort of Lava Hound, stuff like that, off meta things. So eyes on Shek going into this. Default had a pretty good go as well, but ultimately not one as, I would say, dominant, defeating SB in a 2-1. So eyes on Shek going into this, but Default could definitely upset.
Yeah, I mean, there could be some surprises. Certainly, I think it was a surprise when he brought out Mighty Miner. That's Default, of course, in the first week. That, in addition to the Lava Loon, was a fun little deck that we definitely only saw piloted by Default there. So again, is that one of those surprise decks that you can't necessarily get away with 2 weeks in a row? I guess we'll see.
Unfortunate that the Ice Golem didn't take aggro there, but a 5-for-3 trade, pretty good in favour here for Shek Pro. Great kite from the Hog Rider as well, but a Mortar to come out early to kite the Hog Rider. So it's going to be a Mortar deck here from Default, which we did see last week going up against the Expo deck, funnily enough. But yeah, Shek Pro, he's going to get that Hog Rider down again with the Mirror. So a Mirror Hog cycle here.
Yeah, and the level 13 Hog's certainly doing the damage. The cannon comes out as an interesting option here to try and deal with this miner, as well as all the other cards are just streaming through. The Ice Golem didn't take the aggro for Hog last time with the very, these low cycle cards we're seeing from Shek Pro here. Can that happen the second time? No, because the Archer Queen's there. And in response to that, we've got an offensive mortar.
Queen is going to pop the cloak and could actually do some big damage, but it is going to be the mortar now to, I believe, take aggro onto the cannon. So really well dealt with there by Shek. Just shutting down this mortar completely and getting a great elixir trade out of it. The building card now gone means that this Hog Rider is going to have a relatively easy way in terms of not being kited, but as I say that, decimated by the guards in the lobby.
Yeah, well defended. I mean, sure, it's a 5-for-4 trade, right? But you're happy to get away without that win condition doing any damage to your towers. It's been very much locked in the right-hand lane so far. I think it was a single Fire Spirit that got kited. That's all we've seen go on that left-hand side. The Miner hasn't really been on point in being able to deal with that so far, and that gives you, some thought that maybe Default can sort of chip away at this throughout the next couple of minutes to take the dub.
This Archer Queen has had a really good use of her cloak ability as well so far in this matchup, but the Mortar just hasn't been able to get on at all. That was a great log there too, but the Mortar, no, again, not connecting whatsoever. Great Fireball there as well to get that chip damage, and the Miner coming straight out. This right lane starting to stack up with the Mortar now on the bridge too.
Yep, so the Mortar, it is going to lock onto that cannon, now probably the Ice Golem as well. You can see it just feels like Shek Pro just keeps falling behind in his defense. And the cannon, look, it's doing some work, but, it needs something a little bit better, especially when that miner comes out every single time and seems to connect with the tower. That's why he's 700 points behind. Added another 200 to that now as a mortar finally gets a direct tower hit.
It's great to see the switch up as well. Default now knows he needs to play that defense, so that mortar is going to go straight into the middle and shut down this Hog Rider completely paired with the Fire Spirit. So it now gives him the opportunity to play the counter on this right lane. The Archer Queen will come down. It is going to be met by some resistance. The cloaking ability is going to be able to allow her to clean things up. The guards as well. Things are getting spicy. The miner now, but again, the defensive mortar Default is playing this defense in OT perfectly.
And once again, the miner connects with the tower without any significant reply. Able to get enough damage onto the tower and just keep that number going down and down. I think it was when we saw Shek Pro actually bleed a little bit of elixir there in trying to defend with the Musketeer in that last push, where I think things really got out of hand. So he's trying to force things into the right-hand lane now by the left-hand lane by playing those Hog Riders over there. But it's just not going to be enough. He's fallen so far behind that as we fall into triple elixir time with only 400 health left, 2 of those fireballs would really do the trick.
This is great use of the mortar as a defensive tool, and it's actually going to allow the Hog to connect for a lot of damage very quickly. Things shape up a little bit better here for Shek Pro. Some good damage dealt, but can he finish it off? This mortar is being consistently used as a defensive tool now, which means a lot of the heavy hitting ability that Default had is being forfeit in eyes of defense. 2 Hog Riders coming with the mirror, the fireball as well. This could be it. No swing. This is going to be a very close one, Gino.
All of a sudden, it's a lot closer. Finally catching that miner off guard in the last cycle meant that he's still got 21 health alive here, but a log, a fireball, anything will do it now. And Default, with a very good start to the game, is a little bit of sweat on the brow as he finishes that one off, because, man, it got a lot closer in that last minute.
Yeah, that Mirror Hog pushed down the right lane, that mortar cleared out, didn't have it in cycle. Both of those getting very scarily close to the tower, the fireball connecting as well. I mean, so much damage when the Hog Riders do get on. I think it's like, 300 per hit or something crazy like that. So they are a very scary card. And when you're playing them in that mirror sort of cycle stance, it becomes even scarier. But really great switch-ups there from Default, from having that mortar on an offensive side to the defensive side, really allowed him to hold on just that little bit longer in that matchup to close that one out with the spells at the end. But the chip damage definitely came in big for him there too.
It's a very, very good finish there. Of course, it's not over just yet. It's only the 1 win now, so we've got to see what will be in the in the second decks waiting for both of these players. Hog gone now, Mirror as well. So, you know, no funkiness with that coming up again. I don't know. What else are we got in the bank? What else are we expecting? Proto, Skelly King, maybe. Always seems to be making an appearance, and I haven't seen that in game on now.
Yeah, probably a Skeleton King, something a little bit more meta. We might even see the Electro Giant, if I'm being honest. We've seen him 3 times tonight, so definitely a stark distance from where we saw him in week number 1 with 0 plays going into week 2. He has had a pretty big pick rate in that sort of lower bracket side of things, obviously once in the upper bracket as well. So whether or not he has a resurgence here in the second matchup is an interesting question, because he has suddenly now seen some big plays. So definite possibility, I think.
Okay, well, Default on the front foot now with that first win. It's going to be a Fire Spirit to start things off. Royal Hogs come out from Default. Didn't see that from him last week, and it's going to be a split Skelly army, which only partially deals with the threat.
Still good elixir trade, though, and a great placement of the Skeleton King as well. Going to get him fully charged up here before he makes his way down the right lane. So really good management here from Shekpro. He's actually going to even try and draw some more cards out on the left side
like
here.
This.
And yeah, this is going to be a great paired push. The drill, as well. Is he going to get the summon? He is indeed. This right tower is looking very, very tasty. A lot of damage dealt. The poison has done bits, but it's not enough.
Almost, though. I mean, you saw he just waited for Default's poison to run out, then uses the soul summon where it's not going to deal with his skeletons, and it was just a horrible scene there for Default, and a great start for Shekpro. That said, he's only got the Dark Goblin to deal with these Royal Hogs on the left-hand side, but a well-timed Goblin Drill will also allow him to get a little bit of damage on the left side here.
Yeah, Shekpro's elixir management in game number 2, not as good as we saw for game number 1. He's definitely behind a considerable amount, and has been a lot on these trades in terms of counter aggression and defense. So Default is going to be having that easier time with elixir at the moment. Obviously now things to change with the expenditure of these cards, and oops there, apparently maybe Shek didn't mean to drop that scummy, but that being said, the recruit's in the back. An interesting deck build for Default.
Goblin Cage has to come out here. He can't afford to take the couple of hits that Dark Goblin would put on the tower and probably put it down, to be honest. So we get an early Inferno tower, which certainly isn't what you want against some Royal recruits or the Royal Hogs, to be honest. The multi-unit cards are pretty much the antithesis of that. That said, he does kind of clean most of it up in the end. But the gap is closing.
Oh, Warbreak is so close to making it on there. It was really well dealt with by Shekpro, but now he has a lot of cards bearing on both lanes that he has to deal with. The Skami does a great job. The Hogs coming in now. Things are going to be really difficult. He's going to have to manage Elixir here, but he only has 2 in the bank to make something happen. So many cards on the board. Golden Knights dash on through. Things aren't looking great, but the summon is the savior. And Shek holds on. No, maybe not. Ooh, the poison I think is going to finish things off.
16 health, 31 on the other side. Who's going to get it first? The drill comes out on top, and Shekpro evens things up here.
Wow, that is 2 games tonight where we have had way too close for comfort, Genome. I mean, 16 health. The poison was down 1 more tick, and that would have been Default's game any day of the week, but not today. Not today. It's not that day in the week so far, and unfortunately, well, unfortunately, fortunately for us, we get to see a 3rd map here, but what a way to send it to number 3.
Yeah, nail-biting stuff there. I'm sure those players were, spamming a log, something, whatever they had in that deck, just trying to get that last tiny bit of damage in. Yeah, look, the Goblin Drill, a good one to come out with that. Obviously, it does a little bit of damage as it pops up, but I think it might have been even the Goblin that came out that finished it off in the end.
I think so.
Yeah, either way, a nice way to bring that up. I mean, 16 points away from elimination there, or, at least getting knocked down into the lower bracket.
Yeah, it's there definitely is a second chance for one of these players. In terms of redemption for the lower bracket, there is still that position, but I mean, yeah, Sheck holds on for one more. We go on to number 3. A lot of good cards taken out early, though. Logs are gone. We've got both Poisons out of the rotation. Skeleton King has been removed. Hog Rider and Mirror for Sheck. So some pretty big cards in terms of the current meta gone for Sheck going into this third. Default has a couple left to play with. I think Hog Rider's still available to him. So I'd imagine we might see a cycle. Maybe this is where the Electro Giant comes out. I'm not sure, Genome, but there's still a lot available to play with for both of these players.
Yeah, well, I mean, just looking at the decks they played last week, we had Sheck using a Royal Giant Archer Queen deck. Maybe that's something that we'll see come out. And Default, he had that Lava Loon Mighty Miner that we talked about as well. So those are still all options. Maybe that's the ace in the hole, Proto.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could be the ace in the hole. Some big hitting cards, or possibly something along the lines of a tank deck. We haven't seen too many. Well, I say that we have seen the Elixir Giant, the Elixir Giant, the Electro Giant. Sorry. However, not a direct sort of traditional tank as opposed to a P.E.K.K.A. or something like that. We did see the Mega Knight, but other than that, not too much. The bats to start things off, though, sort of leaning more towards some possible cycle here. But this is going to be great early damage from the hogs here from the Mother Witch.
Yeah, it does pop down the baby dragon just in time to make sure it's not 5 hogs. Instead, I think it was, 2, maybe 3 that got out there in the end. A heal spirit as well. Okay. Don't think it actually... not sure it got any heal ticks onto the Mega Minion, but either way, it certainly tanked enough that he got through there. Okay, now we were talking about Lava Loon, but that was actually on the side of... Oh, no, it was. Yeah, it was Default last time. Okay, that was bringing it out. But the Sparky in response. And Goblin Giant, there's a clone. And I almost feel like this game is going to end really quickly one way or the other.
Yeah, I think this is going to be GG's here with the Rage Spell. Yeah, indeed it is. Sheck, unfortunately, is... no, he's going to hold on. 800 health is all that separates him. And, it separates him from a loss here. So Default, a huge push there. They do trade towers, but at what cost for Sheck? I mean, great push with the Lava Hound there.
At what cost indeed? Most of the King Tower eliminated. He's barely hanging on to that cannon. He's going to need to hit some pretty direct hits with that, I would imagine, to stay alive here. Sheck just trying to, you see him actually bleeding a little bit of elixir there because he's trying to wait to see what the next card to come out is. He needs to, put 100% of his focus on defending here because any sort of damage, even that one hit from the Bone Dragons there, is just dire for him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he can hold on. He's already calling good games here. Sparky, unfortunately, not going to get that shot off. Lava Hound to come out, and even just the small amount of damage the Lava Hound does here is going to definitely be close to enough. It's possibly, well, I'd imagine we're going to see the clone spell here too to get the early pop. Yeah, indeed we are. There we go. The clone spell here. It's going to take damage. It's not going to come out. The Lava Hounds are actually going to be what finishes it out. And Default with a 3 crown in the end to clean things up.
Yeah, the clone spell once again being used to devastating effect. I think every single time we've seen it used so far here in season 1, it's been awesome. It's been great to see, and it's pretty much just slaughtered a tower immediately. This time was no exception. We saw so much committed on the other side, but the Goblin Giant, that's a bit by bit card, right? That's a card you play and you get a little bit chip damage, and you got the spear goblins there. Sort of that Electro Giant light. Actually, that's almost the question to ask there, isn't it, Proto? Because they both sort of fill a similar role in terms of a giant that can make its way onto the tower, but has some of its own defenses to sort of keep things at bay. So I'm pretty sure the Goblin Giant's 6 elixir, right? So why for one more elixir would you not play the Electro Giant?
Yeah, for one more elixir, why would you not take the meta option? The Electro Giant already this evening alone has proven why it is such a prominent card in the current Clash Royale meta with his recent buffs. I mean, interesting choice to bring the Goblin Giant there, but at the end of the day, maybe not a comfortable E-Giant player. But, I mean, either way, unfortunately, costed him in that last game.
Yeah, look, in my experience, the E-Giant does most of its own work, to be honest. But there we go. That's going to be the conclusion of our second match here in the winners bracket. We still got 2 more to go, guys. Fitchy coming up. You're going to want to see him and what he brings out again this week. We'll go to a short break now, but please don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our final 2 matches of the night.
My world is my storytelling.
My world is diverse.
Our world.
My world is astrophysics.
It's always been a dream of mine.
I don't know what my career pathway will be.
I approach architecture from the point of view of my culture.
I want to contribute to my people.
It's a way I can give back.
I want to change the perception of engineers.
I want to take my tohu home when I graduate.
Right now, it's about me.
And this is my chapter.
How to do nothing. Gaming is a great way to do nothing with your mates. Best part is, you can pretend you're in the NBA. Even when you're in your stepdad's garage.
All right, guys, we've only got 2 matches left in the night, but they could be some of the best ones yet. We've got 4 of our best players yet to go, Proto, and look, plenty of fun stuff coming out tonight. A bit of a resurgence of Clone, actually, in explosive form every single time.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it like, what, 1 or 2 times last week. We've seen it 3-4 times this week. So it's definitely having more play now that people have seen that it is very strong, I think, in this tournament so far. So, you know, definitely a prospect going into these last couple matches.
Yeah, all right. Well, why don't we just have a look at our match coming up? Speaking of those, Proto, we've got Expo versus Professor.Live. You can see, actually quite a stark difference in the trophies between these two. Only sitting at 6,300 there as Professor, I think, actually possibly one of the highest that we've seen out of any of our players tonight, well over the 7,000 mark, which definitely says something about your caliber.
Yeah, definitely one of the highest trophies we've seen this evening. And for anybody at home that hasn't necessarily realized, Expo has had a rename. Anders is what he was in the last week of play. So if anyone is confused, that's why that has happened. So a little bit of a name change there, but same player, same person bringing everything that we saw in week number 1. So it's going to be interesting. Professor.Live obviously 2-1ing Proxy and Anders 2-0ing Orange Blizzard. So it's going to be interesting to see how these two go. If I had to put money on one of these players, Expo is definitely going to be one to watch, given that he already had that 2-0 victory. So Professor.Live's going to have some making up to do.
Yeah, well, we did see one of those players knocked out earlier as well, but these guys, they're in the winner's bracket. They don't have to worry about that just yet, Proto. They've still got a life up their sleeve. You can see it was a little bit harder for Professor.Live to get through the first series last week. Expo undefeated so far, and the Royal Hogs, they're going to go to work on this Goblin Cage before making their way over to the tower. Mighty Miner, first appearance tonight.
It's a great kite there as well with the tornado, so it is going to mean that the King Tower has been activated on this side of the board here, but the guards are going to connect for at least 1 hit, so it's a good little amount of damage. Left side has had a considerable chunk taken away, but the Goblin Cage Goblin's actually going to get 1 off on the right too, so some good damage early on from both sides, but now it's all going to be about elixir management going into the mid-game here.
Yeah, the Brawler gets his pound of flesh there, and we do see the Mortar coming out now. A quick reply, the Electro Giant on the other side of the map. He knows that he won't have the building to pull it away, the building to deal with it, but wow, the Sparkies are certainly doing their job. Only 2 of them actually taking a zap there in the end, and then of course you've got the guards coming out and with Inferno Dragon resetting on every shield that the Inferno Dragon manages to break. That's also a good reply.
Zappy's going to get a couple of ticks of damage off on the right side tower, but I mean, yeah, great counter for the Electro Giant. So hopefully people going into the next week of play are going to be taking some notes. The Golden Knight actually goes for a dash there before being taken down. Not too sure if that was deliberate or whether or not he just wanted to use that utility. But Mighty Miner, it's actually not going to make it onto the tower. Do we see the ability to use for the bomb death damage? No, but that left side has taken a lot of damage here. Expo so far managing his elixir and his pushes really well going into these last sort of minute here.
Yeah, better with the log there. The first time he brought that out, actually, was almost a predictive log on the top right tower, which didn't seem to do a huge amount. So good to see that he had that in turn when he needed it. This time, Electro Giant going to be paired with the Inferno Dragon on the left-hand side. Now, big push for Professor.Live. He needs this to try and bring things back in his favor. He's at a 600 health point deficit right now, but the Tornado, such a fantastic tool with the Electro Giant. Everything you think might just be out of range gets brought right into its zapping radius, but not much done on the tower that time.
Great counter from Expo there. Just absolutely shuts down that whole left side. The Zappies seem to be the counter to the Electro Giant. I mean, look at the right side currently. He is not going anywhere, and they have done so much damage on this right side. The Electro Giant's not going to connect at all. So this must be the play genome for countering the Electro Giant.
yeah, looks like he's got this one worked out, and as a result, the Royal Hogs get straight onto the tower. The Magic Archer not quite finding the angle to get any of his shots on there, but doesn't matter. He's still ahead at this point. Royal Hogs are countered, though, by a little bit here by the Hogs coming out from the Mother Witch. And, oh, even a dash onto the tower and a couple of hits from this Golden Knight. All of a sudden, Professor's in the lead.
The right side, though, a big point of contention. The Bomber's going to come out. The damage is being done by the Hogs here. Mother Witch to send something back down the right lane, but a big push on the left here. Zappies, we've seen them do big work already. It's all going down here. Everything is happening on this left side. The Electro Giant's going to connect with the Golden Knight. I'd imagine this is probably going to be tower with the Inferno Dragon as well. Lightning not too fast. Professor Live, really well done.
Ooh, there was a big push there on the left-hand side, and I mean, like the right-hand push as well by Eat Expo was also looking pretty dangerous, but couldn't quite finish it off in the same fashion. And you can see there, if you commit too much to another lane that the Electro Giant is not in, it's not a good time.
No, if you've got nothing left in the tank to deal with him, it just becomes such a big issue. I mean, we just saw card dump there on that left side. It was, what can I put down? Where can I put it? We saw Zappies, we saw the guards, we saw everything coming out. Fireball, even the lightning, which we hadn't seen all game up until that last second there, and ultimately to no avail. Tower goes down. It was close. I mean, both of those remaining cards only had sort of, 30 hit points left, both respectively. So could have definitely been round the other way, depending on how the counter push had obviously gone. But in saying that, still a great start.
Yeah, and sometimes when you've got those, those kind of decks where you've got the big pushes building up, you're not chipping away at the tower. Sometimes you'll completely overkill it, right? And it might seem a little less close than it was because of the difference in hit points, when really, a successful push or not is sort of the difference between 1,000 points of damage or more either way. So, look, solid start there from Professor, but, it's going to be a completely different game here in game 2, of course, with all of those cards now falling by the wayside.
Yeah, Professor ultimately winning the first one, so he's going to be sort of well set here, obviously with the advantage for game number 2, but slower start so far. Cannon Cart in the back for Eat Expo is just sort of keeping things relatively close to the chest here. The poison shows its face early on for Professor, so 3 cards already in the first 30 seconds here, so not too much revealed, but Princess is actually a card we haven't seen too much of, as favouring the Magic Archer instead, given he has more range, the splash damage as well. But yeah, the Princess is going to be dealt with pretty quickly by the mining here, so maybe this is why we aren't seeing her so much.
Yeah, I mean, where does Princess usually come out? I feel like historically it's been best in log bait, right? Yeah. So, do we have a Goblin Barrel left in the tank here for Eat Expo? And right on cue, there it is. All right, unfortunately, Professor Live has the log.
Yeah, it's the perfect counter to the Goblin Barrel. So obviously, Eat Expo is going to have to be smart. But as you sort of alluded to already, log bait. This could be why we see the Princess, but he does have the poison too. So things for Eat Expo are going to be exponentially more difficult now that there are both of those anti sort of splash cards. Those splash sort of spells rather. In the hands of Professor to deal with that Goblin Barrel, as well as those sort of squishier cards.
Yeah, well, I think the other interesting thing to note is usually, log bait, you're going for a very fast cycle sort of deck, so that, not only do they have to choose what to use their log on, but you're also putting them under pressure to even have that log available when you present that threat. But if we have a look at the decks here, with the Cannon Cart and the Dark Prince, for Eat Expo, it's actually a slightly heavier deck, and Professor Lives is very cyclable. So it feels like, if he needs that log, he's always going to have it.
Yeah, it has the building as well. I mean, there's a lot there that you can sort of rely on for Professor Lives decks. It's a very good defensive deck. We are yet to see that last sort of card there as well for Eat Expo. So could be a sort of interesting either tanky card, or I'm assuming probably going to be something along the lines of a lightning rocket. But yeah, going into the last 30 seconds here, not a whole lot has been achieved by Expo, who's just been countered constantly by these logs and poisons. Professor Live is managing this great.
Yeah, the Princess, it's either not been played at the bridge or it's been played at the back, and it's just, you know, Professor's had time to deal with it, and it hasn't really been threatening into that cycle of Princess Barrel. So, you know, the cannon cart's not really getting anything done either, and this just doesn't seem to be going to plan so far for Eat Expo.
Yeah, it's gonna be difficult here for Expo. He cannot get anything across this right bridge at all. Professor Live has been there to just counter. I mean, he has cards to drop. He has cheap things to play that can just shut down pretty much anything coming across his left bridge. I mean, the Tesla, there we go. Perfect example. The Prince dealt with one card. Thanks for coming. The Miner back on tower, and it's just consistent damage from Professor here.
Yeah, and just great placement there as well to not take the aggro onto the Dark Prince either. The Princess eats all of it. That's exactly what he wanted. Log on the Goblin Barrel. It's got to be a little bit depressing for Eat Expo every time he pulls that out, and it does absolutely nothing except trade one elixir away to his opponent.
Yeah, I mean, having the poison as well just emphasizes that issue even more. But the poison has been drawn out here, so whether or not, oh, interesting, the Miner there to come out as a defensive card. But there you go, the Rocket to come out. That is the final card as we thought.
Yeah,
bit of something going on the right here, but I think it might even come down to that sort of max OT sort of tower drain possibly here.
Yeah, it very well could. 40 seconds left. We've seen already the start of the Rocket cycle now that we're into triple elixir time. Will that be enough? I mean, he hasn't, like, Eat Expo hasn't taken that much damage, right?
Not a lot at all. Definitely something that is cyclable with the Rocket, provided he just keeps getting it out, because this Miner is doing a lot of damage. It adds up. It really does, Gino. And with that Rocket only coming out once this matchup, it's not having enough of a cycle effect to keep Eat Expo in this game. I mean, the Goblin Barrels just aren't connecting. I mean, look at that perfect log placement there as well. It's just not looking great. It is going to come out at the end, the Rocket that is, but it's not enough.
Yeah, it felt like if he could have perhaps squeezed one more Rocket in there, well, just Rocket at level 11.
Yeah,
I feel like that's more than 400 damage, right?
Yeah, it is.
So at that point, you know, he actually could have won, but you know, starting it off at, I think it was about a minute left in the match, I thought, okay, maybe he can get like 3 Rockets off here, which, yeah, as you said, would have been enough damage, but no, not in the end.
I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of confused as to why we didn't see the Rocket earlier than in the final sort of 40 seconds. I mean, it is a very big damage hitting card, and when your Goblin Barrels aren't connecting, why would you not then switch those onto more of a defensive card and then have the Rocket as your damage dealer? Because keep in mind, for 6 elixir, you're doing upwards of, 700 damage, something close to that with a Rocket. So, I mean, yeah, had he chucked a couple more of those Rockets out in the time that he had left earlier in the game, that definitely could have been sort of a completely different matchup with us going to a third map. But Professor Live played it perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to find that opportunity, though, right? It's hard to find the 6 elixir, especially earlier on in the match. You know, maybe wait for something to walk past the tower, but rarely do players this good give you those kind of opportunities. And talking about players that are this good, we're going to see one of the best in our final match for the night. We're going to go head-to-head here with Fitchy, as well as our final player, who...
Felipe.
Just going to cheat. Yeah, there we go. Felipe. PT, of course, will be his opponent. As you can see, both of them not dropping a match in the first week there, Proto. But I've got to say, the way Fitchy did it like no one else.
Yeah, Fitchy was definitely scary. Barn, I mean, we had the player cam for week 1, and Barn was just, I want to say he was that bewildered by what was happening. He was just laughing at it at the end of it. I mean, we saw it in the player cam. He was sort of just sitting there and he was like, I don't know what to do. I am struggling. Someone please help me. And Fitchy was laughing as well. He was having a little bit of a giggle, just, you know, yeah, okay, cool, thanks. GG, go next. And here we are for week number 2. He's ready to get into it. I mean, it was just absolute dominance. So, it's going to be, I'd imagine, a pretty close one, because Felipe had a 2-0 victory as well over Octurne. So this is going to be a good matchup going in for the last game of the night.
Yeah, look, he was bewildered, he was bemused, perhaps even bespotted with how good Fitchy was at the game. But let's have a look and see if the matchup looks any different when you put him against a player like Felipe.
Yeah, I mean, Fitchy had an absolutely amazing first week, so it's going to be big shoes to fill coming into this game. Both players just again letting this elixir just sort of drain on. None of either player wants to make that first move. Probably going to be some heavy decks here. Could see the Lava Hound on the side of Fitchy. We've seen the Fire Spirit paired with that a couple of times. Felipe obviously as well could be bringing, I want to say, more along the lines of the Giant Skeleton Royal Giant deck. But the guards from Fitchy are an interesting choice. The Mother Witch from Felipe as well. So it's all starting to shape up a little bit here.
Poison comes out, should deal with the Mother Witch. Oh, she does get the one hit on though before she goes down, and that means we've got the Hog going forward. Luckily, the Valkyrie easily enough to tank that going forwards. Now, what's going to come on the back side of this? It's going to be Archer Queen, actually. But the Lightning, her counter, is also in the deck. Fitchy not going to be happy to see that spell coming out.
Not at all. The Miner. So Miner with the Archer Queen here. The Spirit not directly dealing with the counter Spirit there. Fisherman is going to try and attempt to get the Miner to activate the King Tower, but unfortunately the aggro was taken by the Fisherman. So unfortunately no damage dealt to the King Tower there. The Fisherman is going to do some damage and clear some of these guards out over here, but ultimately not too much before being taken down.
Okay, even cycling a snowball there, feeling that, you know, may as well just get that out and get that little bit of damage in while it's available. Royal Ghost met at the bridge. And, okay, Miner gets onto the tower this time. Does get one hit before the Fisherman can take them off. The Cloaking Cape comes through. How many units can the Archer Queen deal with? 2 before she goes down, but the Royal Ghost still in play.
I feel like we haven't seen the win condition. Well, there we go. Okay, Felipe. Thank you, Felipe. He was listening. There we go. The Royal Giant from Felipe. So this is going to be the big hitter here. He's building up for the big left lane push. He's going to start stacking cards up on the bridge, but it's also going to be Fitchy has one something to play with in his pocket. It's going to be the Mortar.
Okay, well, you saw that coming a mile away there. The Archer Queen essentially having to draw that Lightning out. There was almost no way that you know, he was going to allow that to stand. But
the damage.
What else does he have to deal with that giant push when it comes through?
It had to be a building or a spell. A rocket could have even been what was in the hands of Fitchy here. But I mean, Felipe has done well with that Royal Giant push, so he's managed to do a considerable amount of damage, but now with this Mortar on the right side, it's going to draw the Royal Giant out over towards there, and yeah, he does have the ability to sort of just bleed with the Lightning spell here, provided that's only sort of, 3 cycles at max, especially when you pair that with the log as well.
Okay, the Royal Giant comes through on the right-hand side. This time it connects to the tower. Fitchy might not even be that worried about that, honestly. Maybe that was what he planned. Certainly it's the left tower that he is worried about right now, but a second Royal Giant will get on top of it, and he's struggling to do any damage, really. I mean, sure, this Miner keeps getting maybe 1 or 2 hits per time that he can pop up, but that's certainly not enough to deal with the massive amount of damage that is done to his left-hand tower at a massive deficit with a minute left, and the Royal Giant possibly about to finish this off.
Yeah, I'd imagine now with the Mortar being out of cycle, all it is going to take is one shot here, and Felipe is going to have a relatively easy time cleaning up with the Lightning spell. All he has to do is defend what's coming down the left side here, which is going to be relatively easy with the Fisherman. But no, he's just going to opt for the Royal Giant as well with the log, and this is probably going to be pretty clean cut and polished here. No, Giant goes down to the Snowball, so it is going to have to be the Lightning spell and the log to finish things off.
Yeah, Felipe just gets it going. He knows that he's got the log in hand as well. So a quick cycle of those 2 spells puts that one on the side of Felipe. All right, Fitchy, he's looking human.
He is. First loss of the tournament. And yeah, Felipe's going to keep the 100% going. But there was a little, I want to say there was a little bit of a mismatch there. I mean, the Royal Giant definitely coming out on top of that deck. So whether or not they know who's bringing what before you get into it is obviously a big question. But Fitchy, just did not have the deck to contend there at all. The mortar, yes, it was going to be the big sort of heavy hitter there, but he didn't bring it out until, 50 seconds left, and it was in defense. So definitely struggled to get his sort of win condition down early on because there was just so much going on from Felipe, who was just managing the board greatly from his end.
Yeah, really good job from Felipe there. I feel like the Royal Giant's actually been one of our hardest to deal with decks so far. Royal Giant, you bring out the Lightning as well. I mean, how you can play around that in sort of a 3-deck dual meta is something I guess we might see now where, okay, sure, the Lightning's gone, but Archer Queen has also been used as well. You'd like to see that come out after the Lightning spell has been revealed, but no such luck here for Fitchy. Let's see if he can do any better in game 2.
He's going to have to do something if he wants to keep himself in this upper bracket here. So it's coming down to dire straits. Felipe could take this in a 2-0 fashion, but Fitchy definitely wants to hold on, I'd imagine, here. So the Tombstone to come out, I'd imagine this is going to be the meta sort of more style of matchup for these two. The Giant Skeleton probably going to be paired with the Skeleton King as well, but the Mega Knight in the back early from Felipe is definitely going to be an interesting matchup.
I mean, will we see the Graveyard as well with this, do you think?
Yeah,
we have sometimes seen 100%. That paired with the Skeleton King as well. The Skeleton Giant seems to be a little bit optional in this deck, but yeah, this time certainly it's almost like he's playing the challenge that we had in Clash Royale in the last week, right, where it was like skeletons only.
Yeah, definitely the case. This Giant Bomb's going to do big things, but the Mega Knight is just such a tank. He's going to take both of those cards down at the bridge, but dual Inferno Dragons here for both players. The Poison is going to do some good tower damage there as well, but the Tombstone's going to be a great counter to the enemy Inferno Dragon. The Zappy will get one zap off before being taken down as well. So this is a great counter to the Inferno Dragon. So if Felipe can build this push up with the Giant with the Mega Knight, in front, this is going to be scary.
Yeah, you can see the Inferno Dragon does do some damage to the Electro Wizard. It just can't ramp up, so it is enough to actually finish it off after the Fireball does almost that. Last time the Zappies, while being a great counter to the Inferno Dragon, got stopped by the Poison. This time he's just going to let them go. Got something else planned, it seems. He's happy to just take these chips of damage as they come out of the Zappies there on the right-hand side. Ram Rider, okay, that's the final card we see come through from Felipe.
Interesting. Ram Rider Mega Knight deck. I mean, it doesn't push the Mega Knight forward, but that's a great way to tank the jump there from the Mega Knight. Ram Rider will connect for one, so that's going to be great damage on this right side. It's a good game call from Fitchy. Whether or not that is sarcastic or not, obviously, is an interesting thing to sort of look at. But there you go, the Graveyard to come out. So this is going to be one of the big win conditions here for Fitchy, provided that he can get it to connect.
Yeah, looks a little bit unhappy with himself there. The death damage from that Goblin, the Skeleton Giant bomb there actually does a good job of clearing out some of the defenses. And yeah, look, that Graveyard has just made all the difference now as Skeleton King comes up. One of his little minions do block the initial charge from the Bandit. He's not going to make it onto the tower with the Barbarian blocking his way, but at 1,700 ahead in terms of tower damage, it's a really long road ahead now from Felipe.
Yeah, shutting this Mega Knight down is going to be obviously the main priority. The Ram Rider coming in too is not going to do too much damage. Will slow the tower down, but the Mega Knight dealt with really well here by Fitchy. Now he has the Skeleton King and the Giant Skeleton going their respective ways, so it's going to be up to Felipe to try and split this defense up. But here we go. It's going to be the Poison to counter. A great spell there from Felipe to play at this given time.
Well, it is, but of course the Skeleton King's off the back of that, and he uses his Soul Summon. That said, we do see the second spell come out, and the Giant Snowball there will clean up the second lot of skeletons spawned by Fitchy. So he does significant damage to the left side tower now, and at this point, he's so far ahead on both sides that he can just sort of play with Felipe at his will here and really dictate the flow of play.
I think we might be on for another max OT game here. I mean, both of these decks so far have just been cancelling each other out really well. We only saw that one good push come out from Fitchy onto this right side, so whether or not he can find something to connect here again is a big question, but it doesn't look like he's going to make anything happen on this right side at all, unfortunately.
All right, well, Proto's got no faith in the triple elixir finish.
I don't.
For someone coming out ahead here, 30 seconds left, you never know. Nothing sneaky to sort of get into the back like miners or whatnot. A couple of skeletons actually getting onto the left-hand side and pushing it almost below 1,000 there. Oh, this Ram Rider has kited these units so well that they're not even able to get onto the tower and tank for the graveyard. That said, by the time they do, once again, the poison will be down and the Soul Summon can come up for the Skeleton King if he wants to push the issue, but Fitzy prefers to play it a little bit safer. And he's actually just going to cycle it and finish off at the end. Proto, there you go. A crown. We have one. We have it, and it's on Fitchy's head for the second game.
Had there been some defense there, we might have gone to OT, but I don't think we really needed to. We knew what was going to happen. Just let it go on. The crown's there regardless. And yeah, Fitchy, really well done from him in game number 2. And things are getting pretty interesting.
Yeah, 1-1 now. It did seem like a little bit of a mismatch in that first game where Fitchy just couldn't really do anything against that Royal Giant, especially not when he had Lightning to contend against. It's the bane of the Archer Queen, right? If you see that come out on the other side, it's just, I don't know. What do you do? Throw your hands up and, you know, hope for the other player's internet to drop out? Yeah, that's possibly the only strat.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the Royal Giant as well, things get pretty difficult. Royal Giant has been a really potent card for last week and this week. We've seen him be really, really dangerous on the field when in the right hands, especially paired with spells like that Rocket even as well. Lightning spell, big hitters have definitely been his best friends. So maybe we get a little bit more of that.
All right, well, here's the exciting finale to the night. We've been building up to this game the entire time, and it hasn't disappointed so far. Fitchy versus Felipe, game 3. Who's moving on? We're about to find out.
It's going to be, I reckon, the closest we've seen from these two so far, provided that their decks are going to be up to par with each other's. We could have a complete mismatch, a tank deck versus cycle deck, a cycle deck versus splash deck. It could be something unfortunate like that, but both of these players, they don't want to go down to that lower bracket. They're holding their cards very close to their chests. Almost the first minute has elapsed and not a single card has been played, Genome. I'm assuming that these are going to be some very scary decks.
Oh, the tension is ramping up even further as we pass a minute. Now, look, last time we were predicting that, you know, if you had a deck like this, sometimes you just let it ride out, and it's usually on the 1 minute left mark or the 2 minute mark of the game where players decide to pull those cards, right? You get that little jump in elixir. When you transition from single elixir time to double elixir time. So you kind of try and time it so that you get that extra bump in elixir, and perhaps the opponent doesn't because they're going to be wanting to go against you. But once again, it's the 130 mark. I don't know. Is there some sort of like agreement between players that like that's when you should push things out? Either way, you said scary decks, and you got some big scary units on the field.
Yeah, Golem, the first card to come out here. Then obviously with the Electro Giant bringing it up from the backside of Fitchy's lane. I'd imagine possibility of the mirror pairing here, but it is going to be the Golem Knight Witch Baby Dragon Triptych. No surprise there, but a great Inferno means the Electro Giant is going to be able to do a considerable amount of damage here.
Skeleton Dragons go down to the Baby Dragon. Meanwhile, that Electro Giant, you can see why it is favored right now as one of the best tank units in the game. The difference between a 7 elixir unit and an 8 elixir unit is kind of staring you in the face with those towers right now. A difference of 600 damage.
A lot when you sort of come to look at it, but I mean, having the elite barbs to counter is going to be a really good thing for Felipe here. Unfortunately, though, for Fitchy, it gets dealt with relatively easily And this push on the left lane is actually going to do a good amount of damage here. The Baby Dragon actually connecting for a couple hits as well.
Yeah, you know, look, I looked at that tornado and I was like, wow, you know, is it really getting that much value? But it buys 2 hits for the Baby Dragon on the tower. That's worth it, man. And look, we had a question last week about, you know, why are we seeing elite barbs in the decks? And I guess this is the answer. Maybe we just didn't see this particular matchup last week where it's elite barbs versus the Electro Giant, because it seems like they are probably one of the best counters to it. But unfortunately, when you've got that lightning in the deck, and it seems like they usually do to back up the Electro Giants, it's very hard for anything to stand up.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot that Felipe can do here unless he has an insane push on this left lane. It is going to be the cycle, there you go, things to finish off. And yeah, Fitchy, he's not going to be as dominant in week number 1, but definitely keeping up appearances here, walking away with the victory in week number 2.
Yeah, I mean, we see that lightning to finish it off there, well, as well as the tornado. Didn't used to do damage to buildings.
Didn't know.
Once upon a time. I don't know, they buffed it. It must just pick up some random debris on the field and, you know, smash it against the Princess Tower. Either way, Fitchy, he's got that one in the bag. And apart from a little bit of a tough matchup, perhaps even someone as good as him can't get through that in game 1. He's still overall the better player between the two, so he'll be moving on to the third round, I guess, of the winners bracket, which is yeah, look, something we expected. I was a little bit worried after that first game, but does just seem like a blip on the radar and nothing more.
I mean, yeah, Felipe, definitely a scary opponent, I think, for Fitchy. Was struggling there a little bit after the first game, rather, sorry. So no real surprise that was probably, I want to say, one of the closer games we've seen in this series. Obviously, it took a little bit to get started for both players, but that third map was very definitive. When Fitchy has had enough, he will break out the big guns and get the job done. So, I mean, yeah.
Look, it's only going to get closer from here, Proto, so why don't we have a look at the upper bracket as it stands now, just to see what we're going to get in our upper bracket semi-finals. It's going to be Lemons versus Default and Professor Live versus Fitchy, of course. This is going to be happening next week, guys, so make sure we get hyped and get ready for that. It's going to be, yeah, I mean, look, Fitchy, just incredible play there from him at the end, Proto.
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, tonight we sort of got to see those 2 star players that we sort of highlighted from week 1, Lemons and Fitchy, both keeping up that performance, not going down into the lower bracket. So very good to see that we have sort of noticed that these 2 players are going to be ones to watch. But going into next week, I think they're definitely going to be tested a little bit more than they were this week.
Yeah, look, Lemons and Fitchy definitely the ones to keep your eyes on. But for the lower bracket, we've got to wonder who could be the dark horse, who can make that improvement to come back now that we've got some extra players joining them down there in that lower bracket. We're going to see some interesting matches there as well. I'm looking at maybe Octurne versus Felipe as, you know, who could be the upset out of these 4 matches that we've got coming up next week.
It's kind of hard to tell just off the bat. I mean, all of the players this evening, even in the lower bracket, have had a pretty insane sort of run just through tonight. I mean, we saw Electro Giant make his sort of appearance, if we will, onto the battlefield and in some very interesting decks. Obviously, Lightning pairs with him very well, but we also saw the mirror iteration. So things are looking pretty scary as we sort of see a little bit of a shift going into week number 3. But so far for week number 2, things have definitely been pretty spicy nonetheless.
Yeah, we've seen another set of fantastic games tonight. Very much enjoyed seeing Clone come through a couple of times. Mighty Miner continuing to just show up once, like he's this little, you know, Easter egg that pops up once a night for us to enjoy. Yeah, I don't anything else from the meta that really stuck out to you there, Proto?
Electro Giant. It's going to be Electro Giant. If he doesn't come back next week, I will be shocked. Pun intended, but it's obviously a choice. You've got the Electro Giant, but we also now are starting to see the Royal Giant become a big thing. So those are going to be two cards I think we're going to have to focus on going into next week, because all these players are starting to bust these big decks out and things are getting interesting.
Well, chunky units and some chunky counters maybe we'll have to look out for next week. It's been awesome to be with you tonight for the UOA LPL Pro, the ANZ Clash Cup Season 1. So that's it for us now. Thanks for tuning in, guys. But be sure to tune in at the same time every week on Friday until we have our victor.
Up to triple elixir with the earthquake and plague, sudden death, and oh my gosh, at the last second.
That was actually a big upset. Sudden death.
I think it's their game right there. Go Zero. There you have it.
Congratulations, what a great game.